Here at the 11th Annual College Access Summit. Anybody been at all 11? I know I have. Anybody else? All right, I'm just the only old folk in the room, so yeah. We did, Sal Reyes was sharing with me, and we did this similarly. A student affairs team did this a few weeks ago with their program where you get all your staff to line up from the most longevity to the newest on your team, and it's a very humbling experience for those who have been there a long time, you know, just to see. But that's what's great about our institutions is that we start these initiatives and yet we keep growing them and keep introducing new people to them. So if this is your first College Access Summit, anybody in the room, this is your first College Access Summit? Wonderful. That is great. We really love to have you here. So glad you're here, and looking forward to making new friends and really looking at how we can keep building this initiative and making it more and more real and service to our students, which of course is what it's really all about. I just want to take a point of privilege to introduce, we have a very important new member of our team at Valencia that I want to make sure everyone is aware of, and that's Dr. Kim Sepich, is our Vice President for Student Affairs. Kim. So thank you. Please say hello to Kim and welcome her to Central Florida. So now I'm going to turn it over to my co-lead, Dr. for 3 weeks, Dr. Claire Brady.
So my jokes are I don't write prescriptions. I'm not that kind of doctor. I am officially a knight though, so UCF, yay! When we envisioned today, the planning group, the steering group, really talked a lot about, we wanted to make sure that this was an opportunity for all of our partner colleges and universities to connect, to engage, to network with one another, and to really get something meaningful out of this day. It's a huge commitment to send these large teams all the way here, and we want to make sure that it's a great day for you. And we think we really have a wonderful day planned. We want to give special props out to the College of Central Florida. I guess they were the first ones here, and they split amongst all the tables. Isn't that great? Yay, College of Central Florida. So we have 2 challenges for you today. The first is that you really take a chance to connect with staff and faculty from other colleges so that you can meet people, find out some best practices. So if you are sitting next to your colleagues now, later you'll have an opportunity to move around, and we really encourage you to do that. The second challenge is that today is not the ending of a conversation before next year's Access Summit, but rather the beginning of the conversation, so that work can be done between now and when we come back together again next year. So I want to say welcome and thank you for being here.
So at this time, we're going to introduce our leader of our Direct Connect Consortium, Dr. Jeff Jones, and he's going to lead the rest of the program.
Thank you so much. Well, thanks for being here, everyone. 11 years, that's quite a bit, isn't it? That's nice. It's my pleasure this morning to introduce a couple people. Certainly, I want to recognize this morning our provost from University of Central Florida, Dale Whitaker. Dale came to us in August of 2014 as the provost, and Dale has been a tireless advocate for access. It's a big part of what we talk about every day and in every meeting is how we continue to provide access and alternate on-ramps for the students who want to eventually attend University of Central Florida. And that's the job that all of you do, and we appreciate that very much, and we appreciate your support, Dale. I'm about to recognize Dr. Schugert, who's leaving the room with his phone in his hand. But I think I shall proceed anyway, and maybe we can renew that a little bit later. I wanted to introduce Sandy Schugert this morning to you as well. He's the only consortium president that was able to make it this morning. But I also wanted to announce that Dr. Schugert just was named as the recipient of the Harold W. McGraw Junior Prize in Education. This is awarded to individuals who have dedicated themselves to improving education through new approaches, and he is the recipient of the U.S. Higher Education category in that award. So let's give him a nice round of applause, even in his absence, and maybe we'll figure out a way to congratulate him in person here in a moment. It's also my pleasure this morning to introduce to you Jeff Fortunato. Jeff is going to be also a newly minted doctor in December, and also a new knight. So it's great to not only have partners, but also affiliate alumni as we go through this process, right? Jeff serves as the Associate Vice President of Student Services at Seminole State College, and will be representing President Ann McGee this morning. Jeff?
Thank you, Dr. Jones, for that wonderful introduction. Dr. McGee could not be with us this morning. Unfortunately, she is attending a funeral, so I am honored and humbled to provide you Dr. McGee's comments and remarks this morning. So good morning, everyone. It's wonderful to be here with you to talk about Direct Connect and the great partnership we have with the University of Central Florida. Before I delve into talking about Direct Connect, I'd like to take a brief moment to follow Dr. Jones's leadership and congratulate Dr. Sandy Schugert on the winning the 2017 McGraw Prize in Education. The prize recognizes outstanding individuals who have dedicated themselves to improving education through new approaches. Dr. Schugert was recognized for demonstrating a stellar model of community college change, which is increasing graduation rates and helping large numbers of Hispanic students succeed. Congratulations, Dr. Schugert. As you know, Direct Connect to UCF is more than just a pathway for students. It guarantees access and focuses on all aspects of transfer student success. Direct Connect to UCF is in its 12th year and serves as a national model for transfer student access and success. We have a one-of-a-kind relationship with the Johnson Scholarship Foundation, UCF, and 4 original partner foundations to provide scholarships for students at the State College, which continue to scholarship at UCF. Approximately 148,000 students have indicated an interest in Direct Connect since its inception. Truly, truly amazing. About 40% of new Direct Connect to UCF students in 2015 and 2016 were ethnically diverse. During the same time, overall new students were about 47% ethnically diverse. Almost 45% of new Hispanic students were from Direct Connect to UCF partner institutions. As Direct Connect colleges partner with UCF, we are very fortunate to be a part of the vital and ever-expanding Central Florida community. We are key engines for growth, and we all play a vital and pivotal role in the economic, cultural, and educational vitality of the local region. Most of you in the audience are very familiar with Direct Connect, which Seminole State is a part. Direct Connect is a nationally recognized pathway program and has been recognized as such top organizations as Politico, PBS, and the Washington Post, among many others. As for the program's successes, the numbers simply speak for themselves. Since 2008, almost 35,000 bachelor degrees have been awarded to Direct Connect UCF students. This is approximately 35% of all bachelor's degrees awarded to UCF undergraduates. And about 40% of all new students at UCF were Direct Connect to UCF students. But what you might not know is the number of our students who take advantage of this program and their successes as a result. Specifically at Seminole State, 92% of our students who transfer will choose UCF. These students are employed. They are parents. Many are place-bound and want to remain in the local community. We have almost 10,000 students currently enrolled who intend to transfer to UCF via Direct Connect upon graduation. I am sure this is true for your students as well. Our Direct Connect students are highly motivated. On average, Seminole State students take 20% more courses each year. They have a 7% higher retention rate. And they earn their Associate of Arts degree 2 semesters faster than our non-Direct Connect students. Again, truly amazing. In the state of Florida, associate degree students who choose to start their educational pursuits in a 2-year program saved on average slightly more than $3,200 a year in tuition costs, totaling over $500 million in 2015 alone. Yes, $500 million saved in 2015 alone. Each of our colleges have remarkable men and women who have taken advantage of the affordability, personal attention, and excellent academics they get at our smaller schools. Their dreams are big. They want to help people. They want to build businesses. They want to earn doctorate degrees, engineer our infrastructure, and ultimately, they want to change the world. With the help of UCF, these dreams are within their grasp. With their hard work, dedication, and the resources this amazing institution brings to Central Florida. One of the key components of Direct Connect is the curriculum alignment. This is a collaborative effort to synchronize core content and competencies that are transferable within area high schools, partner colleges, and UCF. Dr. Hitt's dream was to increase student access to high quality, affordable education and attract the best and brightest students, colleagues, and partners to his institution. All of our faculty, staff, and students are proud partners in the fulfillment of that dream and in helping fuel the growth of UCF to its current 64,000 student population. Together, we have changed the future for our students and their families. We have done this through the delivery of a pathway to a great college experience and an excellent degree here in Central Florida. We have much, much to be proud of. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Jeff. Boy, those numbers are really impressive, aren't they, when you think of the scale? So, you probably read the higher ed literature as I do. The coin of discussion right now is all about how do you bring things to scale. So there's lots of examples of little boutique programs or little things where you do something for 100 students or only 150 students or something like that. And those are all really important and are certainly on a human scale very important to those students who get benefit from those programs. But how do you really bring it to scale to the whole Central Florida and the size of our institutions and the size of the university? And it's really an enormous challenge, and one, as Jeff said, we have been recognized nationally, but it's not enough, right? So in our everyday work, we see more that can be done, and that's really what today and about what the whole movement is about. So do want to take a minute, too, to recognize that and just congratulate our work and our commitment to it in terms of, it reminded me years ago, we had an opportunity at Valencia where we were starting some of our work on learning-centered college, and we had a consultant, Dr. Susan Frost, who told us after a couple of years, she said, well, you have a very important decision to make. You can continue to tinker on the edges of your institution, or you can really bring this into the center of your work and truly change and transform your institution. And I was one of the folks who was there that day when she said that, and I still remember it, and we were really inspired by that. And so we started really to say, what does scale look like? And we're so fortunate to have a university partner, too, so that's something else I really want to just take a minute to call out. Again, many of us have an opportunity to travel nationally and to talk to colleagues, and many of them struggle with the partnership of their local university or their regional university. So we're just so blessed, and Dr. Whitaker, thank you so much for your personal commitment to this. And I also want to call out Dr. Maribeth Ijas, who was one of my early partners when we announced Direct Connect. Maribeth and I, as we say, were kids together. We both arrived at our respective institutions about 25 years ago. Oh, I'm sorry, you're still a kid? I'm sorry, I have to, right, yeah. But Maribeth, do you remember when we first started in 2005, our boards and our president signed the agreement for Direct Connect, and then we were launched, and we picked a date, April 6, 2006. It was going to be announced. And so between December and April, we scrambled to say, well, what are we going to announce? What is it going to be? And Maribeth and I and some of our colleagues in student affairs representing the institutions met over in the Crispers that's over here by the Walmart. And Maribeth, that's how long ago it was. That Crispers went out of business. So yeah, it's not there anymore. But we used to meet in that Crispers and say, okay, what are we going to do from a student affairs, student services design? What does it mean when we tell a student you're a Direct Connect student? Great, what's that mean? You know, I thought I could always go to UCF. Why are you telling me? I thought there was always a transfer guarantee. What's this big deal about, you know? So really those early questions, and gosh, what we've created now is just really monumental. So just wanted to add a little bit to that history and really to very much appreciate. If you haven't seen UCF's impact plan, I really encourage you to go out to their website and read it. It's very so impressive, and the commitment to the transfer function and the role of the university in helping transfer students to be successful. It's great work, and every day, and they don't have to do that. You know, they don't have to care so much about transfer students, and yet they do, and they're really unique in that. Matter of fact, next week we are hosting an author who's coming from UC Berkeley, Dr. David Kerp, and he's coming to study, again, the university and this commitment to partnership because it is so unique. So really, really want to say thank you very much for that. So at this time, I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker, Mr. John Fink, and I was really fortunate to hear Mr. Fink speak at the League for Innovation conference a year ago, and have been studying carefully. He and his colleagues have really done groundbreaking work on the data related, the national data related to transfer and what really happens for transfer students. And so we're really so fortunate. Mr. Fink and his colleagues are really getting calls like probably daily saying, can you come talk to us, can you come talk to us? I mean, they've been into all of the national conferences repeatedly and to individual meetings as well. And so we're so fortunate that he made time on his agenda to join us today. John Fink conducts quantitative and qualitative research on students' advising experiences at community colleges, the implementation of guided pathway reforms, and transfer student patterns and outcomes. He led the analysis and co-authored the 2016 Tracking Transfer Report, which I have right here, my Bible. And what's funny, my friend Susan Ledlow, who's into sustainability, always teases me that I have to print everything out. Yes, when I have like a 100-page document, I can't read it online. I'm still old school when it comes to that kind of thing. But it's really a remarkable study, and they've co-authored the 2016 Transfer Playbook, which he's going to be speaking and we're going to be discussing, has published in New Directions for Student Services, the Journal of American College Health, and the Journal of Student Affairs Research and Practice. But prior to joining the Community College Research Center, John advised transfer students, so he knows it, right? He lives it. He knows the work we talk about and that we live, and created a comprehensive support program for community college transfer students at the University of Maryland College Park, where he earned his master's degree in college student personnel. So he's among friends, and we're so pleased to have Mr. Fink with us today. Thank you, John. Do you want to put this here, or do you want to hold it?
Thank you for that nice introduction. It's really great to be here. You all are famous. Like, seriously, you all are famous. So I hope I can give you some things to think about, but really I feel like I'm going to be the one to benefit, especially later from these table conversations. Hope you don't mind if I kind of pop around and learn more about it. I work with Davis Jenkins and Josh Weiner at the Aspen Institute. They just like rave about this program, so it's truly an honor to be here. I'm going to be talking about the Transfer Playbook, also some work that we've been doing at CCRC on our transfer research. So just want to acknowledge this project that we're working on, Tackling Transfer. We're doing it in partnership with the Aspen Institute, Public Agenda, the National Student Clearinghouse Research Center. The National Student Clearinghouse has been tremendous partners for this, and the data that we have on transfer that really hasn't existed or hasn't been out there is from the National Student Clearinghouse, and it's really because of you all that we have access to it. So it's all of you submitting to the Clearinghouse, and we're working with them to get de-identified student data so we can, for the first time, really look nationally at what are transfer student outcomes. Also want to recognize the Gates Foundation has been very generous in supporting this work. They're really interested in transfer as a part of that broader pathway that students are taking. I'll be talking about a few studies. These are all available on our website. They're all PDFs. You can print them off or read them, whichever you want. I only have one hard copy of the transfer playbook that I brought with me because I just had to carry on luggage, but I think I'll give that to Dr. Romano. So these are all available on our website. If you're not familiar with the Community College Research Center, we've been at this for now 20 years, studying community colleges, kind of every topic, I think, related to community colleges, except for maybe community college athletics. We have yet to start a project on community college, but that could be a good project. So I'm really grateful to be a part of the team working on transfer. Like Dr. Romano mentioned, this really fits nicely into my background, working with transfer students at a four-year college. So just to start out, we know that the vast majority of entering community college want a bachelor's degree, but most never make it. We were looking at about 1.7 million students who started at a community college in 2007. This was a data set that we were working with nationally. We know from survey data that about 80% of these students plan to get a bachelor's degree or higher, graduate degrees as well. Unfortunately, we found, even when we tracked this limited cohort of 720,000 degree-seeking students, so these students kind of through their enrollment had kind of indicated that they were pretty serious course takers, they were going full-time or part-time for a few semesters. We found that out of this group of 720,000 community college entrants who started in the fall of 2007 nationally, only about 100,000 of them earned a bachelor's degree after 6 years. So that's about 14%. So much lower than this 80%, potentially even higher in this group who are coming in wanting a bachelor's degree. So this is kind of what we saw, about 720,000 entrants, maybe 80% earned a bachelor's degree, let's just say. We found that about a third ever enrolled at a four-year college within a 6-year tracking period, so about a third transferred. 29% of transfer students nationally had some sort of community college award before they transferred, certificate or associates, mostly associate degrees. And then, of course, we found only 14% earned a bachelor's degree within 6 years. So in this report that Dr. Romano mentioned, Tracking Transfer, we put out some 5 new measures on transfer student performance. There really hadn't been these sort of measures nationally because of sort of limitations in how data has been collected at the federal level. So when we looked at, for community colleges, we put out these institutional metrics for how institutions can measure their performance with transfer. Community colleges, we're looking at 3 things. The transfer out rate, how many students transfer, the rate at which those transfer students have an associate degree or certificate, and then this third one I think was a big contribution. We're looking at the bachelor's degree outcomes of transfer students regardless of where they transfer to. So for a particular community college, how well do your transfer students do in getting bachelor's degrees anywhere? For the four-year college, and this really hadn't existed before, we're looking at a transfer in bachelor completion rate. Sometimes institutions would track this, but it was kind of rare, and it's even more rare to look at this state by state and nationally. The transfer in bachelor completion rate is the, of all of the transfer students from community colleges that a particular four-year institution receives, like UCF from any of these 7 or 9 community colleges here, at what rate do those transfer students get a bachelor's degree from UCF within this tracking period? So that was the transfer in bachelor completion rate. And then finally, we looked overall of an entering community college cohort, how many got bachelor's degrees. And this is really a product of how many transfer and how many complete a bachelor's degree. So I kind of want to just spotlight some of the findings from this report. The first thing we see is that there's really wide state-by-state variation in performance on average on these measures. So these are the community college measures. We have the transfer out rates, transfer with award rates, and then the bachelor completion rates among transfer students. I'll just kind of give you a few states as examples. Washington State, the Evergreen State. So interestingly, Washington pretty low on compared to the rest of the country in the transfer out rate. But if you do make it, if you're a transfer student and you do make it to a four-year, pretty high relatively bachelor completion rates, and they're going there with awards. So interesting to see they're kind of high on the bachelor completion, but relatively low transfer out. New Jersey, another example, overall pretty high, above average on all these 3 measures. And then of course Florida. Florida's doing really well, particularly on this transfer with award rate. Look at look at this. It's so much higher than the other states. There is variation here. Florida's above the average on these 3 community college rates, but look at this. It's like 58%, and the next one is like 40%. So really outstanding performance here in terms of the rate at which transfer students are getting awards. It's still only 58%. You'd like to maybe see that higher, but still, I think this is a really big finding from the report. When we look at the transfer in rate among 4-year colleges, we find that the for-profits have really low rates. It's not too surprising. So we really focus on the public institutions and the private nonprofit institutions. Overall, public institutions had a higher completion rate for transfer students than the private nonprofits. Also, about 70% of transfer students went to a public institution. So this is where most of the students are. Most of the students are going to regional, not very selective, but not non-selective, so kind of mid-tier selectivity. And then you see about 42% completed on average. Let's look at the states again. Washington had very high bachelor completion among transfers at 4-year colleges. Same thing with New Jersey. Same thing with Florida. So also fairly high. Florida is definitely up there in terms of the performance of the 4-year colleges. When we look at overall just how many students entering community college are completing a bachelor's degree, that's that 14% or 100,000 graduates. We see Washington is below average. But you may ask, well, what's going on there? They had relatively high bachelor degree outcomes, so why are they below average here? But you might remember that they had a pretty low transfer out rate overall. And I think this really makes the point nicely that if you want to get a lot of community college entrants to have bachelor's degrees, you need to have a lot of them transferring, and a lot of them be completing bachelor's degrees. So it's kind of seems like an obvious point, but it can be overlooked, and we need both access and success, basically. So. Looking at Florida and New Jersey, so I guess New Jersey has Florida beat out by 1%, right? So 17 or 16%. But don't feel bad about it, Florida, because New Jersey had an 11-point achievement gap between low and high income students. So we don't have race data with the clearinghouse, but we did have a proxy for the income status of students based on their census tracts. We were able to merge that information in and look at the outcomes of low income versus high income students separately. This was troubling that we saw in many states a very high gap between the performance of low income transfers and high income transfers. So this also brought up the point of equity in the report that we were talking about. And New Jersey is a state similar to Maryland and others where there is a very low a big gap between, and it seems that their high outcomes overall might be explained by the performance of high income students. As a contrast, Florida maintains its high performance. There's still a gap, a 3-point gap, so still a little bit of an achievement gap, but overall I think it's also remarkable that Florida maintains more or less its performance in having community college students get a bachelor's degree, even among low income students. So also a really great point. So it's great to be here to learn more about what you're doing. So the conclusion from this report was that we're seeing all this variation in institutional performance. So I showed you statewide averages, but there's a lot of variation within states. So some institutions are doing better than others. And even if you look at similar types of institutions, so similar selectivity levels, public 4 years, more selective public 4 years, even within similar types of institutions, you're seeing a lot of variation. So the question here is, it seems to really matter what you all are doing if we're seeing this variation. So practices matter. These programs like Direct Connect, they really do matter in terms of improving outcomes. And this is a hopeful message because we can learn from these programs and try to scale up those practices in other college settings. But first, before we talk about the transfer playbook, I want to go over some of the barriers that we're understanding and we're seeing from our work with statewide administrative data sets around transfer. And I know there's more barriers, but we find that these are kind of understudied. We don't know as much about these barriers, so I kind of want to take some time to go over these. A lot of what I'll be talking about will be drawing on a paper released by some of our colleagues in April of 2016 that focuses on data from Virginia. And what was really great about this paper is they compared similarly matched groups of students who all said they wanted a bachelor's degree, and you had one group that started at a community college and one group that started at a 4-year college, and they tracked their outcomes over 8 years. And they were able to statistically match these two groups of students so that they were pretty similar in terms of their high school achievement, the number of hours they're working outside of the classroom. And so they're comparing community college entrants who are aspiring to a bachelor's degrees to students who are entering at four-year colleges that look pretty similar to community college entrants. So that's really kind of giving us some new information about transfer students. The first thing that we're seeing is that if you're entering at a community college compared to your similar peers entering at a four-year college, you're really lacking some early momentum in terms of getting a bachelor's degree. So this is showing you the credit loads that students are taking. And in this darker blue line here, you have the four-year entrants. So these spikes are fall terms. And it's showing that the four-year entrants are taking like between 12 and 15 credits on average each term. And the two-year entrants are taking between 9 and 12 credits on average each term. And we weren't able to account for all of the student characteristics, but remember that these are matched groups of students on some of their characteristics. So what we're seeing is that students entering at a community college are taking fewer credits as they start out, so first, second, third, fourth year, et cetera. What this results in is that over time, if you're entering at a four-year, you just accumulate more credits. You earn more credits over time. And these two lines start to diverge in this first year after the first 1 or 2 semesters. You also see for the two-year entrants, there's this bigger gap between college level and all credits, which basically means that two-year entrants are accumulating more developmental credits, but overall fewer than four-year entrants. So we're seeing this lack of early momentum. You know, you need credits to graduate. It seems like the students starting at a community college, at least in Virginia, seem to be lacking this early momentum. Another thing that we're seeing, similarly from the Virginia data, is that students are making all this progress towards a bachelor's degree, but then they're not even winding up at a four-year college. So these are the transfer rates in Virginia. You see here the transfer rate for all students who started at a two-year college. So about 23% of them transferred. Remember that we found the national average like a third transferred to a four-year college. Among associate degree earners, 68% transferred. And this is looking in 8 years from starting at the community college. Just think about all the students who aren't transferring. So we got definitely a majority of everyone is not transferring, but even among students who get an associate's degree, about a third of them aren't winding up at a four-year college within 8 years. And remember, these students, they came in, they said they wanted a bachelor's degree. So they're kind of leaving cards on the table. Look at this in terms of credit load. Students entering at a community college, they're getting 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 or more credits, and almost a majority of them aren't transferring. In 8 years, they all said they wanted a bachelor's degrees. So in terms of what we're thinking about nationally, we're really trying to ask this question, what's going on? Students are making this progress, but they're not transferring. The other thing that we're seeing is that the paths that students are taking when they transfer are really unclear nationally. They're kind of chaotic, and they're perhaps representative of the kind of complexity in the transfer system. So we often talk about the 2+2 sort of transfer sequence, right? So this is looking at that same idea. So what are the enrollment patterns? Like how many years are students spending at a community college, and then how many years are they spending at a four-year college? What's interesting is that this group, so this is a pretty selective group, right? These are the ones who were successful. They got bachelor's degrees, about 100,000 students nationally. What we're finding is that few graduates are following this 2+2 pattern. Only about 8% of the graduates are following this 2+2 pattern. And when you look at the other common patterns, there's not like a well-trodden pathway here. You're seeing the 2+3. This is all within 6 years, so they should add up to 6 or about that. You see 2+3, 3+3, 2+4. All these little pie slices over here are smaller groups of students who took something like that pattern. You see the biggest pie slice here is this patterns with enrollment breaks, which is basically students who are stopping out for a year or more within 6 years, and they're still getting a bachelor's degree. So it's really amazing to look that there's not a lot of commonality in terms of the patterns that students are taking. And I wrote about this on our website. I created this tool based on this data where you can go and see in this blog post, basically you can explore around to see all the different types of patterns students are taking. Let's see if I can pull this up here. So yeah, so this is pretty cool. If you want to play around with this, you can kind of see like all the different patterns for students, where are they going in these 6 years. But what's interesting, look at this when you split it out by term. I didn't put this up on the web, but I thought you might be interested. It's like way more crazy. But you just break down like all the unique patterns that students are taking. This shows like the blue is the community college, the green is the 4-year, and then the gray is not enrolled. So the point here is just that it's very chaotic, the patterns that students are taking. And then for the 4-year colleges, what can be challenging is students are coming at all different points in times. They have all different numbers of credits, and they're also arriving at different times in the school year. So remember, this is the group of students who started in 2007 in the fall, and then this is showing just when did they arrive at the 4-year college for the first time. You have the different terms here. So it's like, when are students first transferring to a 4-year college? What we found is about 62% of transfers arrive during the fall term. This is nationally. Probably varies by state, definitely by college. 28% of transfers arrive during the spring term. This is a big deal. When I was working with transfer students at the University of Maryland, really different feel in terms of getting acquainted on the campus in the spring term, like in January, February in Maryland. I know it's nice here in January and February, but versus fall, you know, go football or whatever, sports, you know. So you can tell I'm not that big of a fan. Don't tell my mother. And we also found 10% of transfers arrive during a summer term. So they're kind of coming mostly in the fall, but kind of at all different points in time with all different numbers of credits and prior preparation. So it's kind of unstructured. I know this is maybe, I'm preaching to the choir here because you all are working on structuring it, and a lot of students are getting associate's degrees first. That makes it a little bit easier, but it's an interesting finding nationally. If transfer paths are unclear overall, they're really unclear if you're looking in STEM, and especially unclear in computer science. So Google was interested in the contribution of community colleges to bachelor's degree in computer science. So we did this study looking specifically at students who got a bachelor's degree in computer science. What were their characteristics? First, we found that very few students are able to get a bachelor's in computer science in 6 years if you start at a community college. We looked at about 1.8, 1.7 million community college entrants, and we found about 0.2% earned a computer science bachelor's degree. About 3% earned other STEM bachelor's degrees. So that was about 3,000 students, so 3,290 students completed a bachelor's degree in computer science. What's interesting is that they were not representative of the broader community college population. They're about 87% male, as opposed to like 50-50. We didn't have race data, but we did have income. So when we look at the income breakdown, they're more likely to be from higher socioeconomic status neighborhoods. And you see that for the 3,290 computer science graduates, they took about 1,200 unique pathways in terms of their enrollment sequences to get to a bachelor's degree. So they say no two students are alike. I would say no 3 students are alike. So 1 in 3 had a different pattern. So this is interesting, but it's also a little troubling when you think about when you have such complex systems that require a lot of knowledge, college knowledge, social capital, et cetera, to get through. Unfortunately, what we're seeing, and this isn't conclusive, but the hypothesis is you're seeming to get students that have kind of more resources navigating through these pathways, especially the most complex ones. And when you think about bachelor's degrees in computer science or STEM, those are also highly remunerative. And this is really troubling when you kind of put it in comparison to the potential of community college transfer, which is really to increase social mobility for groups of students in community colleges. So this was a troubling finding. We found, like I said, no well-trodden transfer pathway. You'd think maybe there was a really common pathway, but we found the top pattern was only about 5% of the graduates, and it was a 1+4 that they took nationally. I think this kind of signals perhaps that in computer science, basically the students who have kind of figured it out without really knowledge of how to figure it out, or without clear resources about it's kind of unclear how they got this information, but they're transferring earlier. Which would kind of make sense in terms of the, typically on a community college campus, the sort of 200-level computer science courses, or the ones that would lead into that major, might not be available. There's a really good companion study that was a qualitative piece that came out along with this that talked to students who are interested in computer science at 3 community colleges in California to sort of figure out what was challenging about this process. So math requirements were a big deal. And they also just kind of said how there was this really complex chain of prerequisites to get into computer science. If they even knew what those were, it was a complex chain of prerequisites. So there's a lot of challenges here. And this is very much, the sort of challenges presented here are very much consistent with the transfer playbook that I'll be talking about in a little bit. Okay, another key barrier, transfer credit loss. This is a big deal, right? So national data here, a study, Monahan and Attewell, they looked nationally using BPS data at a sample of students who transferred from a community college to a 4-year college. They found that 58% of those students were basically successful in completing their transfer. So they transferred 90% or more of their credits, just 58% of those students. They found about 15% of transfer students weren't able to transfer any credits at all. They essentially had to start over. And what was great about this study is that they controlled a lot of other factors, like the diversionary effect of going to community college, things like being in developmental education, the success of transfers after they made it to the 4-year. They found that students who were able to transfer 90% or more of their credits, controlling for a lot of other factors, were about 2.5 times more likely to get a bachelor's degree than students who were able to transfer half or less of their credits. So this transfer credit loss issue is huge in terms of the likelihood of getting a bachelor's degree. So this is a big contribution of this study, but we also know that there's a cost issue, both for the state and sort of public policy. The cost of lost credits is like a big cost to society, but also to the students and the students' checkbooks and pocketbooks. I realize that checkbook is kind of a dated reference now, so to students' Apple Pay accounts, sorry. So we're looking at the efficiency of credit loss. This is the Virginia data again. I know that excess credits is a big issue here in Florida. So in Virginia, what the study found, remember these are similarly matched groups of students, they found that overall students are earning about, the 4-year entrants are earning, they're maybe taking 2 classes more than they need to get a bachelor's degree, so about 125, 126 credits on average. This seems to be worse for transfer students that they were finding, and it's perhaps due to this inefficiency in the credit transfer process. So transfer students were essentially taking 13 or 16, depending on how you count it, including developmental education or not. The dev ed credits might not transfer, but students are still paying for them. So transfer students were taking about an extra semester's worth of coursework in Virginia, and this ranges a lot by state. But it just kind of makes the point that when you think about credit transfer, there's an effect on completion and also on cost. So we're looking at this more. So a lot of studies have looked at transferability of credits. That was that Monahan and Attewell study. So that's pretty good, but you all know that's definitely not the end-all be-all in terms of credit transfer. You really need to look at applicability of credits, not just transferability of credits. So the university might accept my credits, but are they all going to count towards my bachelor's degree? Are they all going to count in my major? Or do I have to retake a class? And then that's counted as an elective. So I'm kind of preaching to the choir here, but unfortunately, applicability of credits is a very difficult thing to study on a state level. This is easier on institutions levels because you all can run like degree audit reports and just look at what were the most commonly wasted credits, and institutions are doing this, but it's harder to study on a state level, which is kind of challenging from a policy perspective. There's also excess credit. That's the way we're looking at credit efficiency right now. So I just want to kind of go over a preliminary result from a paper. We're using statewide data to look at students who have started in a community college and gotten a bachelor's degree, and just simply how many extra credits did they have when they graduated. And then in this state, we found that among these like 9,500 graduates, on average, students had 27 extra credits attempted. So it's not credits earned, but they're still paying for all these credits. So that would be about 147 or so total credits. So what we're doing here is we're using decision tree and partition tree analysis to load in all these variables from students' transcripts to let the sort of algorithms and computers parse out this group of students, this 27 on average excess credit students, there's a standard deviation of 22 in there. So a lot of variability in that group. So we want to see within that variability, what are the characteristics of students with more and less excess credits? And so it does this tree analysis where it picks these points and variables to split these students into groups. But it's just interesting if you look descriptively down at this subgroup of 859 students that had an average of almost 50 extra credits that they took. About maybe 170 credits total to get a bachelor's degree. So let's look at the characteristics of this group. These 859 students took a 100 level math class after they had hit 60 credits. So they're at junior standing, they've arrived at the four-year college, and they're taking a 100 level math class. That's not a good sign for efficient transfer. They also took, this is a state with a statewide transfer library. They also took 85% or less than 85% of their credits at the community college were in that statewide transfer library. So they're just not taking the right classes in terms of transferability. They also took more than 44% of their credits. These are kind of they're kind of random numbers like this because the computer just picks the spot to divide it. But basically, these students are taking more than 44% of their credits before they hit 60 credits, so in their first maybe 2 years or kind of freshman, sophomore year at the community college, they're taking a lot of their credits in 100 level classes. So they're kind of loading up on introductory courses at the community college. And so I think, this isn't causal at all, it's very descriptive. We're trying to understand just what are the course taking patterns among students who seem to have better or worse transfer experiences in terms of efficiency. And we're kind of getting some signals here around what matters for transfer. So this is ongoing work that we're working on. So here are the barriers that I was talking about. The big question is here is what can we do to address these barriers? Which is why I'm excited to join your tables later so I can learn about it. But I do want to kind of go over the findings from the transfer playbook. Hopefully it kind of spurs some discussion later on. I know that a lot of the work that's being done here is exemplified in the transfer playbook. But we sought to answer this question. There had been a lot of great studies done on best practices in transfer, but our contribution here is that we used the fact that we had access to this national data to look within the data set nationally at the highest performing pairs of 2- and 4-year colleges. So when I started at CCRC, this was my first task, to try to identify or work with a team to identify the highly effective pairs of 2- and 4-year colleges. So not just is Valencia doing well, or not just is Broward doing well, but the particular partnerships between two colleges. Are they sending a lot of students, and are a lot of those students graduating? So obviously we'd come to Direct Connect, right? You all are sending a lot of students, they have really high graduation rates. We are also looking for comparison colleges, comparison 4-year colleges, to evaluate sort of the what's working at one partnership and not working at another partnership. And we did a lot of other selection too to look at the specific value add of that partnership. So for each partnership, we predicted what we would expect their completion rates to be based on the student characteristics, the institutional resources, all of those things. And then we looked for colleges that had higher than expected or value add sort of completion rates, so a high residuals. And we went to the colleges that were highly effective, that were doing much better than expected. And we also wanted to see 6 different state policy contexts. So this was a set of colleges we went to visit. A lot of our work was informed, because we were doing this with the Aspen Institute, so a lot of the work was informed by Direct Connect and the work being done here. Josh Weiner was involved on all of these visits and was a co-author on the report. So we really based a lot of this off of the work, so it'll sound familiar probably to you all. But these were the 6 colleges that we went to across the country, the 6 pairs of colleges. Like I said, in some places we went to another college to kind of get some more context on the partnership. And here are the overall findings. We found 3 broad strategies, and then there was kind of something that kind of ran through the whole book about building strong transfer partnerships. But these were our 3 broad strategies that I'll kind of just talk a little bit about, give some examples. The first thing was that these highly effective partnerships were really prioritizing transfer. So and this is amazing to see, like presidents, provosts in the room, kind of meeting across institutions, building those relationships, to set the tone, set the message for everyone else working at the institution that transfer matters, for the students at the institutions that where are you going next? You know, we talked to a student at Holyoke Community College. They said, everyone asked, where are you going next? Where are you transferring? So the transfer culture, you know, and I think that having something like Direct Connect is definitely a part of that. People like recognize it. You kind of like, I think it has, I saw something referred to, it's like a verb now. Oh, I'm gonna direct connect to UCF, like, right? It seeps into the culture, right? And you see it at all different parts of all different levels of the institution, from the leadership down to the advisors working with students, down to the students themselves. Of course, a part of this is dedicating significant resource to help transfer students, both for community colleges and four-year colleges, sharing data around who these students are so that you know what the outcomes are by program level. You know how students are doing in biology when they transfer to this college. But also, you know who the students are so that if they didn't get into the four-year college at the first attempt out of high school, they could be referred back to the community college and a spot would be saved for them when they were ready to transfer. So prioritizing transfer was really key. And what's really, I think, an overall finding with these three strategies is that you really need all of them to work. So you have to be prioritizing transfer and be doing all of these other things for there to be this synergistic effect. The next thing that we saw from these colleges is that they're really working together, faculty with faculty, deans and department chairs, to create really high quality programmatic pathways, aligning both curriculum so to reduce the amount of transfer credit loss, but also aligning pedagogy so that students were kind of being trained to learn and be taught in similar ways at the four-year college as they rose to be freshmen and sophomore at the community college. So got a couple examples here, but I think the main thing was what we saw in common across these campuses was that they had groups of faculty really hashing out the details and meeting together to think about what is the ideal pathway, the ideal curricular sequence for a student that wants to major in biology at Colorado State University. They're starting at Front Range Community College. What are they going to have to take? And then sometimes that resulted in unconventional pathways. So, the example of computer science at Colorado State, faculty meeting together, they found that actually at Front Range Community College, the local feeder in Fort Collins, they weren't really able to offer a lot of the 200-level computer science courses that students needed to take. So maybe it's actually best for students to transfer after 1 year and then have a retroactive associate degree awarded to them. So they were working on these unconventional pathways as well. And that really happens when you get the right people in the room thinking about, based on our resources, based on what students need to be able to know and learn and do, when they get to the four-year, what's the best pathway? So here's an example from Washington State, which has the direct transfer agreements. The DTA is their kind of statewide associate's degree. We saw in a lot of states that had transfer associate's degrees that could help to a point, but there really needed to be kind of more regional or sort of local contextualization of these associate's degrees in order to make them actually work in practice for the local colleges, like for the local four-year colleges. So here's what this DTA looked like. There was a statewide sort of template, but Everett Community College took it and made it, they contextualized it for their students. And they did that by adding in an overview of the program, information on what are their top destinations. So Western Washington, Washington State, this is where most of their students go. So let's just like put that on there and give the website, give advisor information for who can I talk to about the courses that I need to take. Have the degree sheets on there, like what are the courses I need to take if I want to transfer in business to one of these destinations. And then what was really cool here is they're doing contextualization of the statewide transfer agreement just in a notes section. Just, hey, here's some notes. Like, if you are going to Gonzaga, you need to take this course. Or PLU requires a course, Pacific Lutheran requires a course equivalent in here. Or Western Washington, you have to do this instead of that. So we know there's all these kind of tedious little details that, how would a student know about this? Except for if they knew I wanted to go into business. I'm thinking about Gonzaga, but maybe Western Washington's pretty nice up there in Bellingham. So, how do I plan out my courses? And if you've ever tried to find this as a student, I know it's maybe similar, maybe different here in Florida, but it's really hard to figure this out. So, we're the experts. Why aren't we just giving this information to students? FIU, I know you all are familiar. So we kind of spotlighted their My Major website that similarly does this on the four-year side. So prospective students, transfer students can look at this and basically pick a program and get a description of that program. And then what are the courses that I'm going to be taking if I come in with an associate degree. So that we thought this was a cool example. We visited FIU and FAU with their connection to Broward as a part of this project too. Okay, in terms of advising, we kind of split out their practices for community colleges and for four-year colleges. And for community colleges, this is really kind of in line with the guided pathways work that we're doing in terms of kind of the main challenge. The key challenge here is helping students actively explore, identify what their interests are, where they might want to transfer, basically have them explore what the pathway is, because if you have the pathway set and it's made a priority as an institution, that's all fine and good, but if the student doesn't know which pathway they need to get on, there's still a challenge and a barrier there. So community colleges are really thinking about how do we get students to understand as early as possible, at least maybe what they don't want to do, or at least a broad area of study. And this has big ramifications in the gen ed requirements in a lot of states, particularly math. And so the earlier this conversation happens, and really what colleges are starting to do now is reach this conversation down to the high schools and get students to think and explore as early as possible to know what their options are. Most people know just a few potential professions that they might want to do. You could probably name them. But there's way more out there, and they're really exciting. And so exploration, career exploration, that's a key challenge, key thing for advising on transfer in the community colleges. Also, once we get them on the path, monitoring their progress, giving them feedback around, hey, you know what classes you're signed up for? Are you sure you're up for the right classes? As well as helping students not just plan curricularly what they need to do, but also financially. So we saw up at Holyoke College that their financial aid office was helping students develop a financial aid plan. So how are they going to pay for it alongside what courses am I going to take to get a bachelor's degree? This is particularly important. Students, if they're not getting that early momentum, they might be at the community college for 3 or 4 years. Pell has a limited eligibility period. Things are only going to get more expensive once they get to the 4-year, and you don't want to run out of money when you're at 100 credits and just almost going to finish. So this is another big thing community colleges were focusing on. This was an exercise we've done, and this is kind of a product of this research, but we don't have to do it now, but just kind of think about it. It's kind of fun to think about. So imagine that you're a student about to register for classes at your community college, and you think you want to do marketing and go to UCF. Maybe this is really easy to answer in this crowd, but go to your college's website and try to find the information that you would need to select your classes for that first semester. How easy is it to figure out what classes am I going to take my first semester or two if I want to do marketing at UCF? Maybe that's easy. I don't know. But in most institutions, this is not an easy thing to do. So yeah, it's a good thing about it. So on the 4-year side, so I used to work at a 4-year college doing transfer advising. And just to kind of also make the point about how interconnected these things are, like the curricular pathways and the prioritizing transfer, I used to run a transfer orientation. It was a great program. We had an ice cream social with transfer peer mentors. It was like the hot summer in Maryland. Everyone loved it. But what it kind of turned out to be, a lot of cases, students would have their advising appointment right before and then come to the student union for an ice cream social, transfer peer mentoring session. It kind of turned out to be like us giving them hugs and like consoling them because they had just found out that they lost like 12 credits that they took at the College of Southern Maryland, So it was kind of like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, can we give you this ice cream and go Terps? So clearly, as an advisor, it was out of my sphere of influence to affect the transfer credit process. We were trying to do a lot in advising. I wanted to bring that up just to make the point of how important it is to do all of these things, because you kind of have to have them all working, I think, to get the sort of results that you're seeing. So anyway, so on the four-year side, what we're seeing is that these institutions really are committing dedicated personnel resources. University of Maryland has since hired 4 more pre-transfer advisors to work specifically with their main feeders. So that was a big step for them. You know, they're having advisors work with prospective students. A lot of the co-location that's happening on campus can help with this. They're also really encouraging students to pick a major before they transfer and be major ready. So at Western Washington, it was like major ready, major ready, major ready. And they were telling students at Everett Community College when they would go out to do their outreach that actually if you want to be admissible to Western Washington, you need to be major ready. We take that into account when you apply to Western Washington, that you need to be ready to enter a major. And they said, even though they did evaluate it in admissions, but it was kind of more of the line that they were using, but it still was a part of really making this and strongly encouraging transfer students to pick a major. Also, we know that replicating elements of the first year experience but catered to transfer students is really important, so there's a lot being done there. Like, you're not new to college, but you're new to this college. So you need to figure things out here. And then fairness and financial aid allocation. Sometimes it was policies that discriminated against transfer students. So sometimes it was practice that discriminated against transfer students. So if a transfer student, if there's nothing that said that they couldn't get financial aid funding, but it just happened that they were admitted later than new students, or they signed up later than new students, and then they were kind of last to the pot, so to say, on the financial aid. Depending on the institution's situation, if they do merit aid or just institutional aid, this is a big deal for students. And students are noticing this. Look at this quote. This is a community college transfer student we talked to. So I applied to this 4-year college as a freshman, and I got scholarships. Then I applied to the same university as a transfer student, and I didn't get the scholarships. Where'd they go? Students are like, where's the money? I'm no different. I'm the same student. We know why this happened. Students don't know why this happened. It's really confusing. So this was another theme that kind of came in. It's really fun to talk about this here because I think that you all are a great example of strong transfer partnerships that have been cultivated over time that kind of undergirds this work. It allows you to have the conversations that you're going to be having today, that you've been having for a decade or so now. So institutions are kind of figuring this out, or partnerships are figuring this out. And what they're figuring out is that when you look at transfer networks, they're really complex. So this is a schematic. So this is some funky stuff I've been working on. All the blue dots are community colleges. This is one state. It's not Florida, but it's a very similar state to Florida. And what you see is that all these gray dots are 4-year colleges, and the lines between them are just like where students are transferring. And you see that like it's really chaotic. Like their students are going everywhere. There's kind of this tangled nest in the middle of 4-year colleges. And so, when you're trying to build partnerships and do things like create curricular pathways, get faculty, department chairs to meet across institutions, that's really a daunting task because you have so many partnerships. How can you do it with everyone? So I think you all figured this out a long time ago, but people are figuring out that if you prioritize your partnerships based on where most of your students go, it all of a sudden begins to look a little less confusing. Still a little confusing, but so in this state, when we just weight the links by the number of transfer students, we see that there's really one main partnership in this state, and then a few other pretty major partnerships. And then if you just look for community colleges, typically sending most of their transfer students to 1 or 2 4-year colleges. And so I think this helps to prioritize sort of where are we going to put our resources in building out these partnerships. And then, of course, you can also look to see how well these students are doing at the 4-year partners. So here we've just kind of added in color to show the completion rates of transfer students in each partnership. And what you see is, if I was a state policymaker, someone looking at this at the state level, okay, we've got one huge partnership here between a community college and a 4-year that's doing really well. And then we've got a bunch of other ones that need more help. So you can think about this from an institutional level or a state level, but it's basically just kind of like, who are your biggest partners and how are students doing in those partnerships? And then what you can do on the college level, and what we saw from these partnerships is that they were looking at specific program by program success. So not just our partnerships with Western Washington University, but biology students going to Western Washington, or what are the top majors, like if you're transferring to Gonzaga, what do most students end up getting a bachelor's degree in? And so you can actually see these things with National Clearinghouse data, and some of the colleges are beginning to look at this to see how the different program by program for particular partners, how students are doing. And that's being used to drive conversations around where do we need to put more supports in, and where do we need to rethink and redesign maybe curriculum between these partnerships. So overall, when we look at, here are kind of the overall findings on what these colleges were doing to build transfer partnerships. So they were designating transfer champions to serve as liaisons to transfer partnerships. At the University of Massachusetts Amherst, they had someone who had been there for like 25 years and who had gained, some of this like wasn't really replicable, so I apologize, but to kind of make this point, so they had someone who had been there for a long time in the admissions office that worked with transfer admissions, but over the time like had really established a sense of trust with the academic side of the house, with faculty, and she actually sat on the curriculum committee and was able to provide that transfer perspective for any sort of changes to programs, and also was able to update on all of their partners on any changes to programs. So having these sort of key like hubs in the wheel, transfer champions, or offices dedicated to this was really helpful. We also saw that there was joint investment on the behalf of transfer students. There was sharing of data that I kind of mentioned, as well as just kind of trusting relationships, things that are maintained by like having an annual conference like this. So I think I'm preaching to the choir here, but just know that we found that this theme of building strong transfer relationships really kind of was a part of all of these strategies. So we took the findings from the playbook and we developed it into a self-assessment tool for institutions to use to spur conversations about how they might continue to improve their transfer outcomes. These are all available on our website. You can download the Word doc and get this file. This might be a helpful tool as you think about like having groups of folks at your institution walk through the rubric, which we have one for four-year colleges and community colleges. And basically what it does is it takes each of the findings from the transfer playbook and then has associated questions to consider, like, are we doing this? Do you prioritize it in this way? Et cetera, et cetera. Has a way for yourselves to kind of rate where you're at with that, and then give some notes around how we might build on this in the future. So I just wanted you to be aware of this resource that exists. Let's see what we're doing on time. Feel free, I don't know if that spurs any questions for anyone, but I have kind of one last section on what colleges are doing to push this work down into the high schools. But also, if any questions came up from that first part of the presentation, happy to take some. Well, maybe I'll just continue on. It's just a few more slides, and we get to focus on Florida a little bit more. So, okay, so what we're seeing, this is kind of evolving work that we're doing and seeing as a part of the Guided Pathways movement. And Florida is doing really well in this, it seems. In terms of strengthening dual enrollment in high school as the on-ramp to college and to transfer. So this is all a part of it, right? It's students, especially in high school, even the community college entrance, a lot of them are wanting bachelor's degrees. Even if they don't want a bachelor's degree, they might need a bachelor's degree based on what they want to do. So what we're looking at how colleges are strengthening this into high school. And what we're seeing is that overall, this is our same data set here, and we're looking at just of all the community college entrants, if you're starting for the first time, what % of your community college entrants are in high school, or 17 or younger? And we found in the fall of 2007, there's actually better data on this from iPad, so I need to update this, but from our one data set, we found that nationally, 15% of all community college entrants were in high school. So, and that's been growing too. So this has been happening for a while. Remember, this is 2007. I wouldn't be surprised if it's more like 25 or 30% now, especially this has grown a lot in states. So this is a little bit dated, but I just wanted to show you that at least in 2007, Florida, that was about 12% of community college entrants were in high school. What's really cool about this clearinghouse data set, and we're gonna put out a report on this in the fall, is that we can track and see where these students go after high school. And so we're looking to see, where do students who formerly participated in dual enrollment in high school, where do they enroll after high school? So are they going back to the same community college? Are they going to a four-year college? Which a lot of people think, if you're doing high school dual enrollment, you're going to a four-year college, which is true in a lot of cases. But what we see is that this is looking at former dual enrolled students' first matriculation at 18 to 20. So we're giving them a wide range to first enroll in a college, and we're just looking to see, where do they first go after high school, after they turn 18. And what we see is that in Florida, 56% of students who had participated in dual enrollment at least once at a community college went back to the community college after high school, at least for one term. So they may have gone immediately to a four-year college, where that compares to 36% going to a four-year college, and then 8% not going to college at all. That's a really high college going rate. And then we're also looking to see, what are the outcomes of those students. And we're splitting this into two groups. So students who first went to a community college after high school, and students who first went to a four-year college after high school. What we see is, overall, if you first go to a community college after high school, you're much less likely to get a bachelor's degree. This is a limited tracking period, so that kind of makes sense. But in terms of timing, so it might just take them longer. But look at where Florida is at on these outcomes for degree completion. These are the students who first went to a community college after high school, and these are the students, and this is actually that split out by income. So Florida overall, for students who first go to community college, which is the majority of students who formerly participated in high school dual enrollment, they have really high outcomes when you look nationally at all the other states. So top among the other states in this data set. And you see that this is any degree completed here, but then you see the breakdown in terms of bachelor's degrees and community college degrees in terms of their highest degree. So overall, for students, if you're first going to a community college in Florida after you participate in dual enrollment, really strong degree outcomes, also encouraging to see not a large gap in terms of income. Four-year colleges, we also looked at the degree completions among students who participated in high school dual enrollment and then went to a four-year college after high school. Also very strong with Florida here. You see there was a small group of them who got a community college award and no other degree, but the majority of students, there's a 65% completion rate among students who first went to a four-year college after high school. A little bit bigger of an income gap there, kind of reflective of nationally what we're seeing in terms of the difference between low and high income students. So kind of to sort of build on our work with transfer, we really want to see how states vary and institutions vary in how they support former dual enrolled students to continue on and transfer and get a bachelor's degree. Just some examples, screenshots from Washington. I kind of wonder if anyone's doing things like this here. It'd be interesting to learn. But so in Washington at Pierce College, they're doing these schematics, these things on their website to basically advertise to students at particular high schools that here's your personalized pathway for a bachelor's degree in engineering. And here's what you're going to do. You're going to take these classes in high school, and then that's going to lead into this certificate and associate's degree at Pierce College, and then you're going to transfer to these destinations. So I think in a lot of states what we're seeing is that especially, like I was just in Ohio, so they have College Credit Plus, which is a governor's initiative where students can kind of take classes for free, and it's kind of take any classes, any amount of classes, like the more you can take, the better. And so there's some concerns about sort of unintended consequences of that, and if you're taking a lot of classes, but you're just kind of taking them because why not, like what is that going to kind of get you on the pathway to your degree program, or might there be some wasted credits? Which is more of kind of a policy issue because it's free for the students. So what we're seeing kind of, I think, to address that is that colleges are really focusing on marketing these pathways down into the high school to say, if you want to take courses in high school, consider these areas, and here's kind of the map for how you could take a certain set of classes in the high school, and then you can build on that with certificates and associate's degree at the community college and complete your bachelor's degree and have these sort of professions. So I just kind of wanted to show you a couple examples of these from Pierce College. Also interested to hear other work that's happening. This is definitely, I think, ongoing work that we're curious to learn more about, and it's all kind of complementary to the transfer work. That's all about getting students to the bachelor's degree, and all this is very much a part of the guided pathways implementation and movement that we've been working on too in the center. So I think that's all for the slides I have, but happy to answer any questions or hear from you all if anything resonates or you have some examples you'd like to share.
Wow, John, you are amazing. Thank you so much. This is really terrific, terrific information. So while the rest of you are thinking about what questions you want to ask, because we're good on time, and this is important, really relevant information for us. One question I thought of is, certainly your data has demonstrated that the phrase 2+2 means absolutely nothing. So are you guys, I love that you have developed I love that you've developed new measures. I think that's a really important contribution to the field to really understand the phenomena, because our previous measures were like too broad and not so meaningful, right? So these 5 measures that you've developed really gives a lot more meaning to our understanding of what students are experiencing. So I'm wondering, have you come up with any invention of new words for the 2+2? Are you guys playing with vocabulary? Because sometimes what you call things really matters.
Yeah, that's a great point. I know we haven't really come up, and I don't want to suggest that we should toss out the 2+2, because I think that resonates with people, and that's a great thing to strive towards. And maybe we should try to do more of that, to try to structure it in more to this 2+2. But we also, I think what we're trying to just show is that when you look at how things are currently happening, it's very all over the place. And on the one hand, maybe that's what it needs to be. We need that flexibility. But on the other hand, maybe we need more structure because this is symbolic of a problem. So we don't really know the answer to that question yet. We're just kind of showing that right now it looks pretty chaotic.
Yeah.
But I think that messaging is critical. You all probably can answer that question better. But if you're seeing that 2+2 resonates with parents or students, policymakers, that might be something to really strive towards. I think we've heard maybe 60+60. That doesn't make as much sense.
I was recently communicating with my friend, Dr. Maria Hesse, who's at Arizona State University. And some of you might remember she was our keynote several years ago. And she was saying that they have stopped using that phrase, but I can't remember what she told me they are using instead. So, I'll run that down with her. But
the other thought, just in terms of messaging, is that we're seeing people shift towards kind of thinking about, instead of full-time or part-time, just being on time. So what's your timeline? Like, how much do you know that if you want to do this, taking 6 credits this semester for the next year, it's going to take you this much time to complete a bachelor's degree? Then people are like, oh wait, I think I need to reevaluate. So it's more like what's on time for you, and then the other messaging thing we're hearing is shifting from sort of the degree to the career to the future. Like, what do you want? What's your end goal? And
the purpose.
Let me tell you,
idea.
Purpose first, sort of thing. Yeah.
Great. All right, other questions?
I had a question about when you had said that all the data that you showed was based on students who said they were seeking a bachelor's degree, correct? Was that measured like at one point in time and never again? Because I'm just wondering if students in the beginning say, oh yeah, I want a bachelor's degree. And then as they learn more about what their pathways actually are, do they want an AS degree or do I want a certificate? So do they just default to bachelor's, or are they asked later on in their career, again, do you want a bachelor's degree?
Great question. So to answer it specifically in that study, it was like one-time question at admissions, like what's your intention? And this is an interesting question you bring up. So it's kind of this tension between what students say they want, and then do students really know what they want when they enter? And what does it mean to really want a bachelor's degree? Like, I didn't go to college because I wanted a bachelor's degree. I went to college because I wanted a future, a career, or something, a purpose that I had in mind that I was still sorting out. But this is why advising is just so critical. And being able to have good information, have that exploration start is early on, high school, entering community college, to sort of figure out what are you interested in. Maybe you need a master's degree, and this is just a part of that pathway. So it was and then the 80% figure around those students want a bachelor's degree. That's also a fuzzy number because it's a survey, and who really knows what, that's a tough question to answer. But the point is just that a lot of them, if you're entering community college, probably want or need or might require a bachelor's degree for what they're interested in, and then so few are actually getting one.
I have a question here. Okay. First of all, very enlightening information. Thank you for sharing. It's been very enriching. As you were talking about the different pathways and over, I think, 2,000 pathways or so forth, it made me think about heterogeneity between community colleges, state colleges, and state universities. And I wondered, have you thought about, or what your thoughts are as it relates to how that heterogeneity impacts the types of services that are required to help facilitate persistence among students, particularly at the community colleges?
Do you mean like differences in types of four-year colleges that they're transferring to, or what? Yeah.
Well, I'm thinking about, for example, you know, when you think about state colleges and there's a wide variety, the diversity of students that are at the state colleges, community colleges, and when you think about how does that affect their ability then to go on to state universities, complete their bachelor's degree, but how does that correlate to the services that are being provided or available to them at the community colleges to facilitate that process?
So maybe what you're saying is, well, I think traditionally community colleges have been very under-resourced in the type of services that they could provide to students.
I didn't quite say that, but yes.
And there is a range. So we found that there was a big range in terms of community college performance in the bachelor completion of their transfer students, even among community colleges that serve more low-income and high-income populations, among community colleges that had more of a transfer focus, and community colleges that had more of an occupational focus. So the averages were similar to among those different types of colleges, but we saw a lot of difference within those groups. So I think the conclusion there is that what these colleges are doing really matters. And clearly some are doing better than others, even among similar groups. So that's what kind of motivated this playbook research, was we want to go to the ones doing well to see what they're doing, what are the replicable practices, and that's kind of what I was presenting around. Well, these ones were prioritizing it, you know, which is dollars and cents, but also there's other ways to prioritize transfer, you know, that have more indirect costs too.
Okay, so related question to that, I was also wondering, when you look at the performance amongst the different states, and you talked a lot about policy, can you talk a little bit about funding levels, the variation of funding levels between states as relates to supporting these efforts?
Sure. So you notice there's a big difference in states in the outcomes. This wasn't a policy study. There have been policy studies of what's the effect of various types of transfer state policy. Typically, I mean, overall what's been found is there's null findings. It's kind of, there's a couple problems with that. First, they're really only looking at transfer out rates instead of bachelor completion rates. But also with policy, there's a huge gap between what the policy is and what the implementation is and how it actually comes out in practice. What we observed about policy, and it wasn't really connected to funding, but it was more so around like what the states are doing to create like kind of these associate degrees or like transfer pathways. What we observed is that state policy was necessary but not sufficient. So it was good to have things like transfer associate degrees. It was good to bring people to the table, but if you really wanted efficient transfer, it had to be hashed out on the local levels. It had to be contextualized because you have all these notes, like if you're going to Gonzaga, take this instead of that. So that has to be done on that sort of bilateral sort of level, but you also need the state policy to have some sort of common framework there. A lot of states are doing it around major areas, like we're doing business, and we're going to have a STEM track or that sort of thing. So I think that can help, especially with some of those core first questions, like what math do students need to be taking? So thanks for those questions.
John, first of all, thanks for two things: for being here with us to share, but secondly, for your intellectual curiosity and discipline to unearth some substantive patterns. My question comes from that computer science example that you had. And I wonder if you saw evidence that meta majors or other kinds of simplification and clustering of curricula had any impact in any of the studies you looked at.
Yeah, so that is the question that we want to answer. I mean, I think that ultimately, so we're looking with the clearinghouse data. It's very limited in terms of the detail we have on students, so we don't get that curriculum information. And the idea of these clustering and meta majors, I think, is becoming more widespread, but you know, especially back in 2007, may have been more of a rare thing, especially in community colleges. So no, we didn't really have an ability to answer that question. What we did find was that I didn't present is that there were kind of two broad findings among what was different about computer science bachelors compared to other STEM and then non-STEM bachelors. We found that overall they were more focused in their course taking, and they're kind of lucky. So the lucky piece of it was we did an analysis I didn't present on, but we analyzed geographically that, and we found that these computer science graduates were more likely to live near a tech hub, which we worked with Google to identify, like, what are the places around the country with these tech hubs, sort of these computer science communities. We found that they were more likely to just kind of go there, or to grow up there. And then they're also more likely to go to colleges that had higher transfer outcomes, so better performing transfer outcomes, more of a computer science success with transfers. So there was kind of this like fortunate side of it, kind of being in the right place, which, you know, fortunate, lucky may be like a nice way to talk about it. And then they're also more focused in their course taking, more likely to take courses in high school, more likely to be have more concentration in their course taking, and to transfer earlier. But in terms of the effects of like these sort of like theories around clustering and meta majors and stuff, we weren't able to look at that. We are very much interested in looking at that, especially as more and more colleges and states move toward the guided pathways model, which meta majors have a very core role in that.
Another question?
Short question. I'm just wondering if you had an opportunity to look at the results in regards to age differences, you know, traditional age versus our adult learners, because there's some different needs and services there.
Yeah, that's a really great question. And we got that feedback on the report after we published it. And basically, no, we didn't split it out by age, but we probably should have. And yeah, and other reports have looked at this sort of from the clearinghouse, their signature reports, they always break out by age. It's really helpful, and it's kind of like as you'd expect. So, you know, with the kind of 18 to 21-year-olds having higher graduation rates. It's challenging though when you look, because we're looking in 6 years, which is like a long time, but also not a super long time. Other studies have done 8 years or up to 10-year tracking period. So there's just kind of different characteristics, especially when you cut along age there. A good question.
Thank you. Well, John, thank you so much. We really appreciate your sharing and really that you conducted this research is really remarkable. So thank you very much for that.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Great. Thank you. So as John mentioned, he's going to be with us the rest of the day. And so if you have other questions or want to talk with him, I'm sure he'll be willing to engage. And now I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Claire Brady.
Thank you. Wasn't that great? I saw a lot of nodding going on, a lot of note-taking. So we're going to move into some smaller group discussions. And in your packets, along with your agenda, there is a discussion group worksheet. More are going to be coming around to your table so that you can actually write on them and hand those in. So there are the 4 different groups, and we're going to ask that once I'm done going through the directions, not yet, I'll use my teacher voice, that you stay at your tables for right now, and that you choose one of the 4 topics, and that if you can, that you try to move away from your own colleagues and try to mix into other tables. So we're going to ask that once you choose a table and sit down, that you introduce yourselves with your name, your college or university, your title, and a brief description of your work as part of that networking piece. That you appoint a volunteer. Do you like that? One member to take notes in your discussion group, hopefully who has nice handwriting. And that you review the elements of the recommended transfer practices, which are also in your packet. For each element, we want you to discuss what are you currently doing that supports this practice, and what are additional ideas of what could be done to support this practice. You're most likely going to have several items listed. You're going to have some good discussion, hopefully. You're going to have about 20 to 25 minutes to have that discussion. Then we're going to come back to the larger group, and we're going to ask that one volunteer, not necessarily the person who was writing, share one current action that supports the practice and one additional idea. And again, we're going to have about 15 minutes for that portion. Sound good, everyone? Great. So please move around, choose a new table, and you have 25 minutes. Have you all appointed your fundatory volunteer? Okay, everyone has their volunteer ready. So we're going to have microphones moving throughout the room. We're going to do kind of one table on one side and one table on another. So, start over here. So you are sharing 1 and 1. Okay, so you're going to need to do the 1 and the 1. So the one idea for each of the 2 questions on your worksheet. And if you could also say which category, which of the 4, please.
We have not been listening at all. We had some really great conversation over here, so whatever I'm about to give you is nothing as far as what the directions were.
Okay, that's all right.
Just keeping it real. So we're an interesting table because we have K-12 perspective at the table as well as higher ed, and we're kind of split evenly. So we really started talking about student advising and really the K-12 side is we're like sitting over here with our fists ready to go because we hear a lot of the information about we need to start at the high school, that career exploration piece, and talking about post-secondary plans, not just college, but post-secondary plans. And so we really started talking about at the high school level, we're even trying to get it down at the middle school level because we're finding that as they're coming in as 9th graders, having the conversation and having to change the perspective of parents about post-secondary education and access to post-secondary education in the Central Florida area, how that is a barrier in itself. So really looking at the advising model and really talking about working with our students from the perspective of what, at minimum, having the students be able to articulate what is it that you're interested in. Maybe you can't even articulate a career or a pathway, but at least what are you interested in? And being able to work and advise backwards, beginning at the middle school level.
Great. How many of you mentioned middle, high school, or parents in any of your discussions? Okay, a lot of you. Thank you. Thank you for going first. That's okay. We're going to head over to this side of the room, and we're asking you for one current action and one additional idea. And please tell us what table you are.
We are Transfer Student Success. And my name's Amy Locklear. I'm at Daytona State. I'm going to share the one thing we're doing, and then I'll pass it on to my colleague to talk about the other item. One thing we're doing at Daytona State is restricting registration for students to register only for classes that are in their degree plan, including their intended major. So they can't see the other classes. They cannot register for them. So when they try to, it says, no, that's not in your major. You'd have to go change your major if you wanted to take that, and that forces conversations with advisors very early in the process.
I suddenly become the volunteer. Mary Renty from College of Health and Public Affairs. First of all, we have to tell you that we loved this. In this table, we're like, okay, we're going to have to look at this for our institutions. But the other thing that we were talking about was orientation and transitioning coming from our partner institutions and how our orientations for transfer students are so fast. And our transfer population is so diverse that we were just trying to define it, and we were just saying, well, we have students at transfer orientation who are 17 years old, and then we have a 45, okay, going into a second career, which are in 2 developmental, stages. So I mentioned that UCF, and I'm sure there's plenty of UCF people here involved, and we've talked about this, I think, if it was last year or the year before, our Foundations of Excellence with the Gardner Institute, and I am the orientation committee co-chair, which we've been looking at the orientation event, which is one day, and we've been making some recommendations on how to make that transition better, because we all think that everybody is in the same page, but we're all a different world, okay, itself. And again, how can we get them prepared better coming from a partner institution, but then when they get to UCF, what do we need to do at orientation to make sure that they transition well? And what can we do pre-orientation to get those students to transition?
Thank you. Thank you. I love the energy. We are going to have to go a little faster, though. There's a lot of tables. We are going to have to go a little faster. Thank you very much. All right, right over here. What group are you?
Okay, we're transfer partnerships, and we're going to go faster. Okay, so Valencia is already doing the Start Right guide for the student, which I think sounds like a fantastic idea, and requiring SLS classes. I want to say UCF, a plug for my office. If you're not already sending your students to talk to transfer and transition services, so we are already providing services. We want to provide it to more of your students, so that's very important. So one of the things we thought was most important is more clarity for the students in the directions that they should go in. One of the concerns, of course, is should they be in AS degrees or AA degrees? We've had issues with that. Students are moving around a lot because they're confused, or when they get to the university, they don't understand why they did an AS in the first place. So definitely more clarity on the front end with that, and also co-curricular recommendations. And my concern, like when they talked about computer sciences, are our students at the community college, they're taking the math and the sciences, but they're not getting that same kind of programming courses and work that our junior or our freshmen are getting from the day that they come in. So I want my transfer computer science students to be successful at UCF, but how do we get them there? We want to figure out ways to do that.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Okay, over here.
So we had Transfer Student Success. Valencia College actually has a couple of really cool programs that I think could be really helpful throughout the state. One of them is the CUCF program. C stands for Successful Early Exploration. What they do is they try to get students within their first 2 semesters, spring or fall, take a busload of them onto campus at UCF, where the students will go on tours, they meet with students, there are breakout sessions, they have lunch there, so that those students within that first 2 semesters of being at a state college can get the experience at being at UCF, which is the largest school in Florida and the 2nd largest school in the United States, I think. So that can help give those students the experience and also help give them an incentive. I want to get my AA so I can transfer to UCF. And then something else that Valencia College does is they have designated advisors based on their meta major. Not all colleges have that, and by having a designated advisor for your meta major, they can also then have a more personalized experience with their advising to help with transfer credits and making sure that even if they don't transfer with an AA, their credits can still transfer as closely to the program in which they want to enter when they transfer to a 4-year school.
Great, thank you, Robin. Okay, over here.
Hello. So we were student advising, but we were excited, so we also talked about transfer student success. And we have representatives from UCF Regional and Valencia. So from the UCF Regional side, we were talking about a transitioning we're going through from all of our advisors, enrollment services, and student services, moving towards student success coaches. So we think that will help with transfer student success so that it can be a one-stop shop, so there's not frustration of, oh, go down the hall and talk to enrollment services for that, and then you can make an appointment with student services. So more encouragement to come talk to us so they know exactly I'll go to one person and get all of that service in one place. Also, Valencia just recently hired 21 NSC faculty members, and they also participated in advisor training, so they understand the emphasis and the need for talking about transitioning early on, choosing schools, majors, and prereqs that will be important for them. So that's what we're currently doing, but we're talking about additional ideas of kind of increasing that collaboration. So we can do partner group advisings or doing classroom visits. We each have our respective milestones that we want students to hit for our institutions, but kind of including that so it's kind of one checklist for students who want to graduate from Valencia and go to UCF of where they should be doing at each kind of credit, 15, 30, 45.
Great, thank you. Next table.
Hi, I'm Joanne Holleran from College of Central Florida. At our table, we were represented by College of Central Florida, UCF, Cocoa, Palm Bay, and Lake Sumter. So we had a variety of good practices. A couple of the things that we talked about that we're doing properly is that with whether you're a first-year specialist or our meta major advisor, we have individual plans. We tailor individual plans, and we call them, some people call them prep steps, and we call them advising sheets. But these help our students plan out their path for the school that they eventually want to go to for their higher degree. Some of the things that we talked about that we could do maybe better or improve upon is all the advisors that are at the different schools that are in the Direct Connect program, maybe the advisors need to meet on our level to talk about the different things that we could do to help our students, and also attend the department meetings so that we have, from the instructional side, we have feedback from the faculty members about the different courses and the different changes that are happening for the Direct Connect program.
Great, thank you. Just want to remind everyone, we could do one example from each. We're going to distribute all of the ideas from all of your worksheets to the whole group. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Suzanne, and we have Valencia, Daytona, and UCF here. And what we are currently doing, we have Direct Connect that travels to all of our satellite campuses. And the additional ideas to support the practice for transfer partnerships is we would like to recommend a degree audit module at the start of enrollment in programs or in the colleges, which would make the student accountable for their plan of study and would have that plan of study in front of them when they do that degree audit, because their courses are outlined in that degree.
Great, thank you. I'm hearing a lot of prescriptive stuff. This is interesting. Maureen?
Hello, I'm Maureen Anderson. I'm with the College of Central Florida. One of the things that we're currently doing, our table represented UCF, College of Central Florida, and Valencia, UCF regional campuses. One of the things that we talked about that we're doing well is the UCF information sessions at the Florida colleges to help resolve the pipeline issues of the students transferring. One of the recommendations of something that we could do better and additionally is students transferring to the four-year school having challenges, not being realistic about what the expectations are for the employment, and so perhaps partnering with career services so students are more aware of what they're getting into instead of thinking that they're going to get an accounting degree but not wanting to sit behind a desk all day.
Thank you, Maureen. Okay, over here.
Hello, we are Program Pathways, and we had a smattering of everybody from the consortium. As far as what are we currently doing, one of the things we have is UCF's consortium data reports that tell us about the transfer of students that are coming to UCF. One of the things we'd like to see is in the report, what are the courses that students are transferring that do not actually count towards a degree?
We have a meeting this afternoon where we can talk about that. That's great timing. Great idea. Hey, over here.
I am standing up. I know I'm really short, guys, just in case. I'm Andrea Villafuerte from Valencia College, and my table was UCF and College Central Florida, actually, and like Sumter. We had the best ideas, but of course we can only give you a couple. So what we're currently doing that supports our practice, so we're doing Program Pathways. We found it really interesting. Of course, UCF is doing Pegasus Pathways coming in spring 2018, and that was great because that helps the students kind of plan out and get all their degrees, semesters, all the way until graduation. So that's really good and a good support system, so can't wait for students to see that at UCF. As Valencia, we have our new program advisors. That's what we have currently started within the past 2 years, and these are program advisors that are set up for specific meta majors, so we support the students specifically on their degrees, on their transfer paths, giving them resources and kind of catering to them so that we have a long connection with them rather than a one-time meeting in that way so they can become successful. Some additional ideas that we had.
Okay, I'm going to cut you off. I'm sorry. I'm going to cut you off. We're only 1 and 1, so we're going to keep moving.
Kidding.
Sorry.
Then just kidding.
So we're almost out of time, so I'm going to modify because I'm the co-MC, so I can break the rules, right? If the remaining tables could tell us their one idea, not necessarily something we're currently doing, but their one idea, that would be great. And we're going to move over here.
Hi, Jessica Simmons from the University of Central Florida. I think one idea that we had was just to try to consistently collect data, the same types of data, and in the same mode, so then we can share that data easily. In
Right.
Central Florida and the UCF Direct Connect are thinking about ways to collect data in the same format, such as Qualtrics.
Great, great. Okay, over here, Deb Glass, Lake Sumter State College.
Thank you for the introduction. So one thing that we were talking about, because at our table we had the Assistant Vice President and Institutional Data Administrator, Linda Sullivan. So what we were talking about is the transfer of data sharing, so getting maybe those statistics back to us, to the partner schools, community colleges, Lake Sumter, about when our students do transfer, what is their success, how are they doing, especially with our, for example, BSM programs. They're going from the ASRN in class, totally face-to-face, to the online BSNs once they start working and stuff like that. So how are they doing?
Another great idea for our afternoon session, right? Right here.
Our idea, we're with the transfer partnership, and we are with UCF. And one of the ideas we're looking at is improving student experience with shared systems. For example, not having the students have to request their transcripts to be sent over to UCF to streamline that process.
So more seamless between the institutions. Great, great. Love that idea. Okay, this group right here, go for it.
Hello? Okay, so I'll talk quickly. Ours is advising. We had Lake Sumter, College of Central Florida, Seminole State, and our idea is high touch, high communications with students all the way out through their pathway, through their 2 to 6 years with us. Through mass emails, phone calls, texting. At Seminole State, we have scripted emails that we send out every semester. So, hi, how are you doing? We're checking in with you. Come to a skill session. Hi, it's time to enroll. Hi, it's time to graduate. And we do about 10 of those out. And if they've opted into text, we're now texting them all the time. So that is our idea.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Victoria Clelly from the College of Central Florida. We have everyone here at the table from different schools. We had the transfer student success. One idea that we've heard that we really liked was have a transfer fair. Like we have college and career fairs, but not a transfer fair to where representatives from other schools can come to our campus and tell our students and even our faculty and staff what's required, what's the process, things like that. That would be very interesting.
Great, thank you. Table in the back.
Good morning. My name is Jason Dodge. I'm with a group from Lake Sumter. We had CF and UCF. So we talked about a lot of the great ideas that have already been discussed. One of the areas that we really hit on was doing our best to eliminate the ambiguity between AAAS, what is needed for that transfer path. In doing so, using meta majors, and so really clarifying that language and communicating it to our student bodies. And looking at what we can do, Mr. Fink discussed at Everett those degree maps and looking, and I know that there's different areas that we're doing those, so sharing that across institutions, as well as I know there's some grants that are also perhaps coming up as well in that area. So again, sharing that information.
Great, great ideas, right? Great ideas. Thank you, everyone. We are going to be walking around making sure we get a copy from each and every table, but we do not want to take any time away from our outstanding student panel that's about to kick off. So thank you for participating in that exercise. Thank you to John Fink. Big applause, right? So we're going to be walking around and we're going to transition in. In they come. I think we should clap for them, too. Here come our students.
Don't be shy, talk to the mic.
Seminole State, how you doing? Thank you for being a part of the panel.
Oh, right over there. Hold on. I'm gonna have to figure out. I don't want to squeeze in like a little bite.
Yes, we got next to each other.
They put us right in the middle. Yeah. We're important. It's all right. It's all good.
Oh, you see us? Oh, okay.
Hey, how's it going? It's okay. Someone's got to Snapchat this.
I'm Slim Shady.
All right, we're going to go ahead and get started with our student panel. So much has gone into our 11th annual College Access Summit, and there's so many people that have done so many things to pull this together. But I have to say I'm confident that I've got the best job on this agenda because I get to lead the student panel discussion. And we were out in the hall gabbing, and I found 3 things out. 1, they can talk, so this is going to be a great conversation. 2, they're actually really funny, so again, great conversation. And 3, apparently, we have really good coffee here today. So, all right, we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to ask each one of our panelists just to go quickly introduce yourselves, what institution you transferred from, what state college you transferred from, and what's your current major at UCF.
Hello, my name is Valerie Anderson. I transferred from the College of Central Florida, and I am an elementary education major.
Hello, my name is Valencia Dubra. I transferred from Seminole State College, and I am an interdisciplinary studies major.
Hello, my name is Marian Espada, and I transferred from Valencia State College, and I'm currently a public admin major.
Hello, my name's Chase Flato. I'm from Eastern Florida State College, and the major is sport and exercise science.
Hi everyone, my name is Amber Hupp. I transferred from Seminole State College and I'm an elementary education major.
Hi, my name is Zoe Merling, and I transferred from Eastern Florida State College to UCF, and I'm a psychology major.
I'm Ashley Whitaker. I transferred from Daytona State, and I'm also a psychology major.
And I'd also like to point out that Valerie is a Johnson Scholar winner. So we have a Johnson Scholar representative here. All right, so panel of experts here. Your first question. When you were at your state institution, what did you know about Direct Connect? How did you find out about Direct Connect? Who helped you with Direct Connect? What did you know about the program?
I had no idea what Direct Connect was until like probably February of last year. I remember walking into one of the main buildings on the Citrus campus of College Central Florida, and there was this big sign, and I'm like, what is this? I have no idea what this is. I've never heard of this. A couple weeks later, Crystal Flynn who is now my advisor, was in there just talking to students, trying to get the word out what it was. And I think we sat there for like 2 hours. I had so many questions for her because like UCF has always been somewhere I wanted to go. So it was really, really interesting for me that they had this program that was letting me able to end up going there.
I found out about Direct Connect through my advisor, but even before she had told me about it, I had seen flyers all over Seminole State advertising Direct Connect anyway, and so I became interested that way. So my advisor and then from the flyers around campus is how I found out.
I actually found out about Direct Connect when I was in high school. I think we had some type of assembly, and Valencia came out to speak with us, and they told us about Direct Connect, so that's kind of how I found out about it. And then later on, when I did attend Valencia, every single time I spoke with an advisor or with someone to ask a question, have you signed up for the Direct Connect program? Have you signed up for it? So they always made sure that we knew about it.
I only found out about the Direct Connect program because, as Valencia said, all the flyers are laying around. We had this office for the advisors. So I just kind of just walked in one day, and because I was almost done with my 2 years of Eastern Florida, and my advisor, Kimberly Poppert, she's like, yeah, well, we'll get you set up, and it was a very easy, simple process.
Much shorter than him. I was actually part of the first generation freshman program at Seminole State, and I was a Wayne Dench scholarship recipient. So through the program, I found out about the Direct Connect program that UCF had, and I made an instant connection with the advisors at Direct Connect. So that was pretty much what brought me in, was that first gen program.
I actually knew about Direct Connect while I was attending high school at Satellite High School in Brevard County.
And my dream was always to go to UCF, so I knew that going through the Direct Connect program was going to be the easiest way to get there. So I had already like planned meetings with the Direct Connect advisor as well as advisors at Eastern Florida to like start when I first started at Eastern Florida as a dual enrollment student.
Direct Connect at Daytona is actually a pretty big deal. All over the city, there's advertisements on our buses, on billboards everywhere, especially on campus. But our advisors did a really good job of kind of prioritizing it. It's almost assumed that you're part of the program already. It's almost an expectation to be in it.
So as y'all were doing Direct Connect, how did you prepare? What are some steps that you took at your state institution to get ready and start to prepare yourself for entry into the university? Chase, we can start with you if you'd like.
Oh man, that's good. Good change up. To prepare for the university, to like go into the university. Oh man. I kind of just jumped right into the university. I really didn't have any expectations. I was just like, I have everything figured out. I know my degree. I know my path. And I just kind of like threw caution to the wind and went right in. And fortunately, everything was so like organized that I had no problems with anything at all. Not even like classes or credit hours even being set up.
For me, it was actually pretty easy going to the Direct Connect advisor. When you first walk up, there's like all like the colorful sheets that talk about like the different majors that you can do at UCF. So I picked up the psychology one and we went and discussed it. And that day I went home, got on UCF's website and brought up the schedule for classes that you have to take for UCF. So any prerequisite that I could take at Eastern Florida to prepare for UCF, I took and got that out of the way. So once I got to UCF, I could focus on the real core classes that I needed to take. So it was a smoother transition than having to worry about being at UCF for longer than I needed to be, since I had like a full like 4-year plan already when I started at Eastern Florida.
I actually am kind of one of those check and double check kind of people. So I began with Direct Connect my first semester at Seminole State. I visited their office at the Sanford Lake Mary campus and just kind of introduced myself, let them know I want to do elementary ed, find out what I needed as far as prerequisites when, just so I knew that I would have a smooth transition into UCF. And I really did. I had an excellent transition, and I owe that to the Direct Connect staff because I was able to meet with them so early.
Sorry, go ahead if you want.
The Direct Connect staff at Seminole State was amazing, by the way. They made sure that I had all of my prereqs out of the way, which I'm thankful that they did. I also toured UCF a lot. I knew the campus by heart by the time I even actually transferred. And I made sure I went into the student life area and spoke with other students to get their experience about the university. So just prereq and touring and speaking with other students.
Okay. To prepare to go through the whole transition process, I was meeting with my coordinator, Jenny, probably a year before I was even ready to transfer over, to make sure that I had everything I needed for my major, all the prerequisites and credits that I needed and everything. So it was nice to be able to know what I needed, in advance so I could make a plan for myself. So that was pretty nice.
My biggest thing was the prerequisite part of it. There were several prerequisites before I started my elementary education major that I had to make sure I was done and out of the way of, or it could have messed up classes later, or it could have made my workload a lot harder later on, because university classes are already a little bit of a step above from the regular classes at the College of Central Florida. So it was really nice to be able to just know that my prereqs are done and out of the way, and I could just go with the program and not have to think about, well, I have to take this at some point, I have to figure this in somewhere. So that was one of the best parts of that.
So one of the things that as I was listening to you, it seemed like you all had your major picked out in terms of what you wanted to do at UCF. How early did you make that decision? How did you know to pick that major? What influenced you to choose the major that you did when you were thinking about coming to UCF? Valerie, you want to start?
I knew from my second year of college at College Central Florida that I wanted to do education. I've always known it since I was a little girl that that's what I was going to do, and it worked out so well for the program to be offered so close to me over in Ocala that I knew I could never make it over to main campus and actually be able to be a part of the UCF program through it. So that was one of the best parts. I couldn't believe that it all worked out to the point where I could go to my dream school and do what I love to do.
When I first transferred to Seminole State, when I first enrolled in Seminole State College, I knew that I wanted to study mathematics, but I also loved science. And so once I found out that it was possible for me to combine the two, which is interdisciplinary studies, that was really good news for me. And so I went into Seminole State as a mathematics major, and now I'm at UCF studying math and science. So.
In honesty, when I came to UCF, I had no idea what I was gonna do. I was one of those students that was like kept on switching majors, and I would go to my advising appointments before I came into UCF and ask a million questions about every single degree that I wanted to go into. So what actually helped me choose my major that I'm in now was one of my friends. She actually worked for ROS at the time, and then later on ended up getting a job as an advisor for UCF. So I asked her, I don't know what to do, what should I do? And she gave me some excellent information as far as going to the Career Center, taking testing, and she had a lot of knowledge about the different programs and just began to speak to me about what you can do with some of those degrees or with whatever it is that I major in. And once she started mentioning the types of job that I could have, because we had to go backwards rather than start from the bottom and build up, and I figured out that I wanted to do public admin. So.
Well, I changed my major like 5 times, so I can tell you the order. It goes psychology, and then it goes mechanical engineering, and then it goes health informatics, then aerospace engineering, so I can't do engineering. And then I finally chose sport and exercise science. So, but the only reason why I chose sport and exercise science is because I had to look into my personal life, and I was like, well, just because my dad's an engineer doesn't mean that I have to be an engineer. You know, your family will greatly influence you to do what they want you to do, but you got to look inside yourself and go, all right, well, I'm sorry, but I can't do that. So, yeah, it was yeah, lots of talks, lots of stuff. It's okay, we're cool now. So, yeah. I mean, he's happy I'm here. He's not here, but he knows I'm here. Anyway, so I chose sport and exercise science because I love to work out. It's just my favorite thing to do. And I also saw a growth in people who I would train personally, and I'd see them grow right in front of my very own eyes. I didn't have to wait till I was done with my degree to figure out, if the person I'm helping is happy. I could see the person grow as an individual right there in front of me. So, but yeah, this is like my favorite thing. Now it's my favorite major, and I can't wait to continue and be done with it because after this, I plan to just be done. Well, not done. Well, done with school, yeah, for sure. But the military is my next step because I know you gotta be fit. So I said, hey, if you're gonna join the military, might as well just be really fit and choose a major that makes you strong. So because I know it's a very physical thing.
I actually knew in high school that I wanted to do something that involved working with children or younger people. So I went for the elementary education major, which I absolutely fell in love with. And through Seminole State, we did a lot of the in-service and observations and things like that in the schools. And then last semester, we started to do some student teaching. And I actually realized that I wanted to narrow down my focus. So in all honesty, I am changing my major starting in the fall to communication sciences and disorders. And I am narrowing my focus to work with disabilities.
I actually as well knew in high school what I wanted to do. It wasn't until my senior year, because before that, I thought that owning my own record label was going to be the best thing in the world for me, until I realized how much math comes along with a business major. And I am utterly terrible at math. I'm lucky I can do fractions. So psychology was always in the back of my mind as something I wanted to do. And I took my first real psychology class my first semester my senior year in high school. And from there, I just decided that it was what I wanted to do and that it was the path that I was going to take, and I was going to finish it out and not worry about the whole wanting to do math at one point in time.
Psychology, well, general psychology was a prerequisite that I had, and after taking that course, I immediately knew that I was going to stick to that, and every professor that I had with a psychology class was always absolutely amazing, you know, like a very good figure towards me, so I decided if I can go that route, then I could be that person to other people as well, so.
Marianne, we're going to address this question to you to start. One of the things that you'd mentioned that you were kind of unsure about your major. So let's flip the conversation into the transition process into the university. What, if any, challenges did you experience when you transitioned into the university?
I think that the transition itself was seamless, to be honest. I felt like I didn't really have to do a lot of running around to get into UCF once I was part of the Direct Connect program. I think that the biggest barrier that I had to face once I was already in UCF was how big the campuses were. Like, it was just a lot of information to sift through. If I had a question, I had to go from one department. If it didn't belong in that department, I would have to contact another. And so I think the size of UCF can be very intimidating and makes it a little hard to get the information that you need, especially if you have a unique question.
For me, my transition was fairly smooth until I did not have that one-on-one interaction with my professors. That's what I missed the most. But other than that, everything went fairly smoothly. All of my paperwork and everything, didn't have any problems with that. I did run into some out-of-state tuition issues, but they resolved that fairly quickly for me. So yeah, it was pretty smooth.
My transition was also incredibly smooth. I don't know if it was because I was talking to her like every week and she knew my name before the first day of class, but I didn't have any problems. We made sure to communicate as much as we could, and anytime she needed something from me, I knew it. Anytime I needed something from her, she knew it. So it worked out so well for me. I didn't have any problems or issues with it.
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with Marianne. The size of UCF can be a very difficult thing, because if you do have a very specific question, you do have to go through a number of hoops, like ask a number of departments to figure out if your question is able to be answered in this department or this department. But other than that, the transition was very smooth. It's just very easy to get going.
I also had a very smooth transition. The only issue that I had was that in Seminole State, I didn't realize that for the education program, you had to have the general knowledge test scores to get into that program. So that kind of affected me and pushed me back a little bit. But other than that, working with the advisors, they were there with me every step of the way, and I'm actually still with them today. I work in their Direct Connect office with regional outreach services, so I'm so attached to them that I can't leave them.
My transition was really smooth as well. I think it wasn't only the assistance of the advisors and the Direct Connect advisors for UCF, but also it seems like myself, along with everyone else, really knew what they were going to do. So it was also like our half to be prepared to know what we were going in there, and not just going in and sitting with an advisor and being like, well, I don't know, you tell me what to do. We also stepped up and we took that, and that helped the advisors because they knew what to do to help us, so that we didn't have to go to 20 different places when we were just trying to start at UCF.
I think we can all agree it was pretty easy. Very, very smooth process, and my advisors made sure that I was pretty prepared for it. So it was kind of like that, you know.
All right, Amber, I'm going to kick it down to you for this next question to start. You all mentioned that it was a seamless process. What surprised you the most in this process, in the sense of, was there anything that you were anticipating as being a challenge, but that because of Direct Connect or your involvement with your advisors ended up being a seamless process? So was there something that you were thinking, oh, wow, when I hit this, it could be a challenge, but that it was a seamless effort? So what surprised you in your transfer experience?
I think mostly just how easy it was to, we were already in the Direct Connect program, but how easy it was to apply to UCF and get in. Coming from being in the first generation freshman program, I don't have a family background, parents and family members who attended college and knew those processes. So having an easy process that everything was mostly done online and the advisors were there to answer any of the questions that I had just made it very simple.
Yeah, I definitely have to agree with Amber. It was easy in the sense because, as with her, I'm one of the first to like go to an actual college in my family, and so a lot of the time I couldn't go to my mom or anyone in my family to be like, oh, okay, well, can you help me with this? But the Direct Connect advisor and the advisor at the Palm Bay campus, Patricia, she was actually really, really great. I was meeting with her maybe like 6 months before I even started at UCF. And if I had any questions, I was emailing with her, and she would always get back to me really quickly. So if there was ever any questions with the application or with financial aid, it was smooth to get through and finish, and that made it easier, and it like made me more excited for UCF because we did have so much assistance and so much help that I knew that that's how it was going to be also when I started at the college.
Applying was a little intimidating, you know, going on to a university, coming from a state college, but also being prepared, and we have a guaranteed admission with a certain GPA, so that was pretty nice. But it was actually really easy, so there wasn't any really big worries. So that was...
I was only surprised that I got to go to university, or I'm still going to university, because you know my dad went to university, but I'm the first like on ever besides him to ever go to university. So it's already a great honor for me and my family just to do that. I'm just glad that it was very easy. I didn't have to jump through so many hoops to like, you know, like I gotta take this test and then I gotta take this test. No pressure. It's just zero pressure.
I was actually surprised that by the time I was done with Valencia, UCF was still willing to take me because as I was pursuing my AA, I'm former foster youth, and so if anybody knows, only 3% of former foster youth actually graduate with a college degree, and so I went through the same process. I started college, I took way too many classes, failed all of them one semester, would pass the next semester, got all Fs. I wanted to just work because I thought that was the most important thing. And then, I don't know, one day I woke up and started getting everything together. And at the end, you know, I graduated with my AA. And I said to myself, you know, UCF is so big and they have so much notoriety. They're not going to want me anymore. But because of the Direct Connect program, they were like, what are you talking about? You have your AA. Come on in. So it was great.
The thing that surprised me the most when I transferred was the amount of scholarships that were available for transfer students. That surprised me the most. And another thing too was all of my credits from Seminole State were actually accepted at UCF. That's what I was worried about. And so once I saw that they had actually accepted all of my credits, I was really happy. That was really big relief.
The one thing that worried me the most before starting was just like the whole orientation process and the paperwork side of it, because I live in Citrus County, Florida, which is like on the other side, west side of the state, and it's very hard for me to get to main campus. I was panicking. I was like, oh no, I'm gonna have to go to main campus like a couple times probably to get all this done, and I have never had to go for anything like that to get that stuff done. I was able to just work with the Ocala campus, UCF Ocala, and it was so much easier than I thought it was going to be. So that was great.
So just because I heard it mentioned a couple times, by show of hands, how many on this panel are first time in college, first in their family to go to college? So let's talk about your time at the university. So you're all in UCF right now, and what plans, if any, did you make to pay for college? How are you paying for your university experience, and were there any plans that were made, and are those plans working out?
When I first started at College Central Florida, I was available to get the Pell Grant, and that's what made me be able to get through. And I also had the Bright Future Scholarship from high school. So I continue to get both of those. And when I started at UCF, the only thing that I had to do differently was that I took out some of the Stanford loans to help just with life expenses at this point, just to help me get to school and make sure that I can actually focus on school, because it's a 5-class course load instead of a 4-class. So it was a little bit different, and I had to spend a lot more time dedicating myself to what I was doing.
When I was at Seminole State College, I remember my second semester at the college, I was on my way to my advisor's office to withdraw from my classes because I did not have enough money to pay for 4 classes. And as I was walking to her office, I received an email from the Johnson Scholarship Foundation saying that I had received a scholarship, and that covered everything. And so I turned around and I went back to class because it was great. And to this day, it still blows my mind that I was about to withdraw from classes, and then I received the email saying that I received a scholarship. And I still have the scholarship to this day, as well as Pell Grant. So that's how I'm paying for my education.
Former foster youth do actually receive a tuition voucher, so that did make it a lot easier for me to go through Valencia and then get to UCF and have a way of paying for my classes. However, I also have a son now, so I found it very difficult to work full-time and then take on a full-time course load. Besides the voucher, I do receive Pell Grants, which really helps with the cost of living, and then occasionally I do take out some loans to help with that as well, because I don't feel that having a child should prevent me from continuing to go to school just because I don't have the time or the money. Money will come later.
Getting all these scholarships, I don't got nothing. I have literally nothing. I'm paying it all out of pocket, but I will tell you it's not that expensive for what I'm doing. So I am very jealous of all you guys.
For my AA degree, I did receive the Wayne Dench Scholarship, so that got me most of the way through at Seminole State. When I transferred to UCF, I started using my Florida prepaid college plan, which I still thankfully have enough to get me through. The only thing about Florida prepaid is that it does not cover my book tuition, so I do pay for all of my books and lab fees out of pocket.
For my AA degree, I was luckily able for both years to get the Pell Grant, but once I started at UCF, we had to start putting my stepfather on my financial aid, and he made more money than Pell Grant would allow, so I did take out student loans for the past 2 years. I paid with student loans. It really isn't too bad. The student loans do cover everything, and it does help because you get them, and I can pay for my textbooks as well, because textbooks almost sometimes seem like they're more than the classes themselves. But it's when I look at what I have to take out right now, I know that it will assist in the future, and I'll be making much more than what I'm taking out now to get my education.
I was lucky enough to be blessed with a Florida prepaid fund as well, and books and everything are out of pocket, like Amber.
All right, Zoe, we're going to throw it over to you for this question. In terms of your involvement with the university, what are some things that you're doing outside of the classroom to connect with the university? What are some things that you're engaged in, involved in, any activities? One of the things that we hear oftentimes about transfer students is they don't often connect with the university or the university experience. What are some things that you are doing, if any, to connect with the university, and or what involvement do you have outside of the classroom?
Yeah, I'm doing a lot at my regional campus. I go to Palm Bay Regional, and I'm part of their Psych program, their Psych club. I do research with Dr. Sharon Witten on campus, and I've been doing that all 4 semesters that I've been there. And it's actually a very active campus. We have our ROS on campus, and they're always doing different things for celebrations, and they're all very welcoming. And most of us, since it's a small campus, are all part of Psych and Psych Club as well. And so we're always having some sort of connection with one another, and we've all actually become really good friends. We'll go out together, and it's really nice because going to a regional campus, you always have that worry that you won't connect as well with people because they could be at a regional campus because they're working or have kids, which in this case a lot of them do, but we all make time to make sure that we're not just doing schoolwork, that we're participating and that we're having the college experience that we can at a regional campus.
When I began my first semester, I was almost immediately offered a job with Regional Outreach Services at Daytona campus, and it's connected me with fellow, colleagues that are in the same major as me, and they've brought me to. Sorry, I'm kind of nervous. They've brought me to psychology conferences out in Palm Bay. I've been doing research with them and everything. It's also connected me with the main campus, just networking and everything. I've been involved in teaching assistant duties and everything like that, so it really was super involving.
So like Ashley, I also received a position with Regional Outreach Services at the Seminole State Sanford Lake Mary campus. So that campus is like home to me. I took my classes for my AA degree there. I also take most of my classes for my undergrad for education there. So that campus is definitely important to me. So I wanted to make sure that I could give students what I felt that they needed, which was a connection to the main campus in Orlando. And I'm also the treasurer of Education Plus, a student organization for student leaders in education. And I'm also a member of the Golden Key Honor Society.
Can't top that at all. It's okay. All right. Well, all I got is this research. We're just giving research from all our professors, every class I've ever attended at UCF for the degree. They said that we have a lot of research programs out there if you want to attend, and we're always given that opportunity. And well, it doesn't give us extra credit, which is unfortunate because sometimes they say that, but that's not true right now. I was just told that last week. So, but yeah, it's just research that I can give you.
When I first came to UCF, I did online classes because I was working full time, so I didn't actually have much interaction with UCF. However, my program does require an internship, so I did leave my job to do the internship because graduating was like, I have to graduate. Like, that's what I hold on to. Like, I'm going to plow through anything. And so once I started doing my internship, I decided to do another internship the semester after. So that's what really got me connected into the UCF culture and just the atmosphere working in higher ed. And then I was recently offered a position working part-time for student services. And so I would have to say this is the best job I've had in the entirety of my time working.
Before I even transferred to UCF, I knew about transfer nights. And once I actually transferred to UCF, my very first day at UCF, I found myself in the transfer nights office. So transfer nights is an organization for transfer students, and we are our own little family. I love it. It's great. I am also the vice president of Phi Sigma Pi National Honor Fraternity, and I am the new administrative director for the Multicultural Student Center at the University of Central Florida. So transfer nights helped me with that, getting to know everyone better around the campus.
Unfortunately, I'm not really involved in anything besides classes. there's really not too much offered or shown at the Ocala campus. So, like me and the rest of my classmates, we all will sometimes go out to dinner or something like that. But if nothing that is with the college or the university, we don't have anything that's really comes out to us too often.
And Ashley, we'll start down with you. So we've talked about preparing to transfer to the university, your actual transition process and time at the university. But let's look forward ahead to your career and to your profession. So what do you ultimately want to do, right? And what are you doing to help prepare yourself for your ultimate career?
I'm hoping everyone else can relate, but I'm kind of undecided at this point. Kind of just doing the best that I can for now and exploring, different kinds of psychology and everything. Hopefully spark some interest, but, I have a plan sometimes, but it changes by the week, really, so.
I currently want to do marriage and family psychology. So I'm looking right now at getting my PsyD instead of a PhD because I have done research for 4 years and I know that I do not want to be doing it for the next 4 years. So there's a few colleges that I'm looking at. FIT, which is close to where I live in Melbourne. I also applied to the UCF Masters in Clinical Psych just because I know how great of a school it is. I know how great of a program it is. So just slowly, hopefully grad school might take a year off and continue working as a behavioral consultant, which is what I'm doing currently. So a slow, steady process, but getting away from research is my main goal right now.
I know I want to work with kids, and I definitely want to work in the school systems. School is important to me. I grew up going to Orange County Public Schools. Orange County was very helpful when I transitioned to going to college. And I knew I wanted to work with kids, so I decided to go for the teaching. And then next semester, when I changed my major, I know that I now want to do speech-language pathology. So I'd like to be a school-based speech pathologist.
This is my favorite question. Okay. Well, we all know I want to do military, but the job is fighter pilot, so that's very different. Yeah. Because the Air Force has been poking at me a little bit. So I said, all right, well, after college, and they just actually, you know what? He called me yesterday. I was at the gym. He said, hey, if you want to hurry up and get your officer thing going already, we can. It takes a year to get that going. So if you ever want to, all I got to do is go into the officer recruiter or UCF area and say I want to be an officer and get the application done, filed, and completed. By the time I'm done with my degree, when I walk down the aisle and get my diploma, I should be able to go into the any kind of recruiter's office, and then the application should be done, and I should be able to leave. So, but the dream is, even though the Air Force has been edging on my door, I still want to be a Blue Angel. So, it's okay.
Yeah. My passion is definitely reaching back into my community. So foster kids, I'm definitely interested in the nonprofit sector. I'm very interested in higher education, thanks to my internship. And so I graduate next month, so I definitely want to pursue my PhD. So I'll go hopefully for my master's in the fall and get my PhD in public affairs.
I would like to work as a math and science coach for either Seminole County Public Schools or Orange County Public Schools. And I plan on taking a gap year before I do my master's, but my dream is to be a mathematics professor.
My goal is to teach 7th and 8th grade English language arts, middle school. And in the elementary education program, I'm also getting my reading endorsement throughout it so that it's going to be able to, so I can teach kindergarten to 12th grade in reading. So that's my goal.
So I've got one last question, so we can wrap it up. But before I do, just show of hands, because I've heard it a couple of times. How many in here are planning or looking forward to going to graduate school? All right, very good. So the last question that I have for everybody is, you've got a room full of administrators, of leaders, of advisors, of higher education professionals. What suggestion do you have from us in terms of helping to build a transfer experience for students that is successful. Any other suggestions that you have beyond what we've already talked about?
I think, oh, I'm sorry. I think just like I mentioned earlier, my biggest hiccup was having to go through so many departments just to get a specific question answered. So just, I guess, in whatever position it is that you're serving UCF, I think that it would be really important for you to gain as much knowledge as you possibly can. And when it is that you meet with a student, going maybe, I know this sounds crazy because you guys go above and beyond your jobs all the time, but going above and beyond what is in your actual, I guess, job description to help the student with, and just maybe directing them to the right place so that, because I think sometimes when you have to jump through too many hoops, it can be very discouraging, and some students may even give up depending on how to what extent that is.
So like I had said, knowing your entrance requirements for certain programs, like elementary education, the GKT is a requirement. I didn't know anything about that when I started when I completed my AA degree. So my first semester at UCF, I signed my first contract to continue my classes because I had not passed the GKT yet. So with my first semester, I went ahead and took the test. Unfortunately, I did not pass it. So that made me have to sign another contract for the next semester. And I took that semester to study for it. And I went ahead and took the test again, and I did not pass again. So that's one test that was holding me back. But if I had known about it sooner, I think it would have given me more time to prepare for it.
With Eastern Florida, I think that sometimes it's more about the classes that you're taking there and not as much about what's going to happen when you leave and go to a four-year university. So for me, doing my own research and finding out what classes I needed to take was a little bit stressful. And I think for me, with the advisors at Eastern Florida, maybe a little bit more like help with looking towards the future and not just like, well, here's what you have to do for your AA right now. And if classes work over, then that'll work. But I think that help with the AA and at the state colleges for your future would be a big assistance, because you do have that stress about, worrying what classes you have to take and then comparing it. Is it going to fit with my AA? Is it going to fit with my prerequisites? Am I going to be able to get all the classes that I need to get? So that was a bit of a stress for me going through my transition from Eastern Florida State College into UCF.
All right, anybody else? All right, so let's give a round of applause for our wonderful student panel.
Thank you so much. The student panel is always the best part. No matter what we talk about among ourselves, hearing from you all is really what matters to us. So thank you for taking the time to get here. We know that was a burden, and we really appreciate it. And thank you to Dr. Sumner for preparing and finding the students, and that's enormous. You did a great job, as always. So yeah, that was very good. So just a few things to follow up. We had a few people have asked me about Mr. Fink's PowerPoint, and I think asked him too. And he's going to put it on the website, the CCRC website. And if you're not familiar with that website, like, bookmark it. It is fabulous, honestly. I go there all the time, and it's really easy to navigate, and they have great resources there. So I'm sure that you'll be able to find that easily. I also really want to thank the UCF regional campus staff. Is Emily in the room? I want to thank Emily. Where is she? Okay. Well, I know Deborah's in the room in the back, Dr. Deborah Bradford, our technical support, Dr. Jones, Emily Bortoff. I mean, everybody has been fabulous, and they really brought the whole team and all the organization, and we really, really appreciate that. And we are going to do an evaluation. We'll send it to you online. That really is helpful to us. I mean, that's how we kind of redesigned this today's program. So please give us your honest feedback. It'll really help us plan for the 12th annual. And Jeff wants to say a few words to close us out, but I really want to say thank you to my colleague, Dr. Claire Brady. We just had a hoot planning this, and we found like we're really the same person, you know, maybe about 30 years apart, because she's my little sister maybe, but we are like so simpatico. We're like, think alike, and 1, 2, 3, get it done, and it's just been a joy. So thank you very much, Claire. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you for giving. Am I on? Yeah. Thank you for giving me the last word, because one of the things I want to do is thank both of our co-chairs, Dr. Joyce Romano, Dr. Claire Brady. They've thanked many other people, but let me tell you, they've been very diligent. They've been communicating back and forth with me and us, and this takes a lot of work to pull this off. And my final thank you goes to all of you who change lives and livelihoods every day. Thank you.